Every CEO has enemies. But what if your most trusted ally is your greatest threat? Evelyn Cross built an empire from her father's ashes, becoming one of the most powerful women in America. Tonight, she lies in the darkness of her own office, pretending to sleep while her CFO enters with a keycard he shouldn't have. The FBI says there's a traitor selling her secrets. Every instinct screams it's him, but in the next 2 hours she'll discover that the real enemy wears a far more familiar face, and the man she's about to destroy might be the only one who can save her. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The leather couch in Evelyn Cross's corner office had cost $12,000, imported from Italy with hand-stitched seams and cushions filled with Hungarian goose down. Tonight, it felt like concrete. She lay perfectly still in the darkness, her breathing slow and measured, eyes closed but mind racing at 1,000 miles per hour. The city lights from 47 floors below cast geometric shadows across the ceiling, familiar patterns she'd memorized during countless late nights. But tonight, those shadows felt different, threatening, like everything else in her carefully constructed world. The Patek Philippe on her wrist read 11:43 p.m., 17 minutes past the time she'd told her assistant she was leaving. Long enough for word to spread through the building that the CEO had finally gone home. Long enough for someone to think the coast was clear. Evelyn had been many things in her 38 years: daughter of a suspected criminal, orphan at 19, self-made billionaire by 32. But she had never been a victim, and she didn't intend to start now. The soft chime of the elevator made her pulse quicken, though she kept her breathing steady. Someone was coming up. At this hour, only 7 people had access to the executive floor: her assistant, her general counsel, her chief technology officer, her head of security, her communications director, the night cleaning supervisor, and Daniel Reed, her chief financial officer, the man the FBI believed was selling her company's secrets to the highest bidder. Footsteps in the hallway. Soft. Careful. Someone who knew exactly where the cameras were positioned, exactly which floorboards creaked, exactly how to move through this space without being noticed. The footsteps stopped outside her office door. Evelyn's fingers, hidden beneath the cashmere throw she'd draped over herself, found the small recording device she'd positioned on the couch. All she needed was a confession. Something concrete. The FBI had been investigating for 3 months with nothing but circumstantial evidence and suspicious timing. Tonight, she would give them proof, or she would discover she'd been wrong about the one person she'd almost allowed herself to trust. The door handle turned with barely a whisper. Someone had a keycard. That narrowed the suspects, but not enough. The door swung open slowly, deliberately, and closed again with a soft click. She felt, rather than heard, someone enter the room, moving with the kind of careful precision that spoke of training. Military, maybe. Or something else. Through her barely parted eyelashes, she watched a shadow move across her office. Male, tall, moving toward her desk with the confidence of someone who had every right to be there. Daniel Reed. Her chest tightened, though whether from anger or something more complicated, she couldn't say. She'd hired him 8 months ago, impressed by his credentials from the Treasury Department, his innovative approaches to corporate finance, and his ability to see patterns in data that others missed. He'd been professional, brilliant, occasionally infuriating in his refusal to accept shortcuts or easy answers. He'd also been kind, patient with her daughter Emma when they'd crossed paths at the office, thoughtful about remembering details, how she took her coffee, which reports she wanted summarized versus those she preferred to read in full, the fact that she hated surprise meetings but loved surprise solutions. She'd almost made the mistake of considering him a friend. Now he was in her office at midnight, accessing her computer with keystrokes so quiet she could barely hear them over the building's HVAC system. Evelyn's fingers tightened on the recording device, just a little longer, just enough to hang you with, Daniel. But something was off. His movements weren't frantic or furtive. He wasn't inserting a USB drive or photographing documents with his phone. Instead, he seemed to be reading, scrolling slowly through something on her screen, occasionally making notes on a small pad he'd pulled from his jacket pocket. Looking for something specific? Evelyn's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. Daniel Reed froze. For exactly 2 seconds, long enough to be human, but not long enough to be guilty, he stood completely still. Then he turned toward her, his hands moving slowly away from the keyboard, empty and visible. "Ms. Cross," his voice was steady, unsurprised. "I wondered if you'd actually left." She sat up, keeping the throw blanket positioned to conceal the recording device, and reached for the desk lamp remote. Soft light flooded the office, revealing Daniel's face clearly for the first time. No guilt there, no fear, just a kind of weary resignation that almost looked like disappointment. "It's nearly midnight," Evelyn said, her voice cold and controlled. "And you're accessing my personal computer. Either you have a very good explanation, or we're about to have a very short conversation before I call security." Daniel's jaw tightened. He was handsome in an understated way, strong features, dark hair, just beginning to show silver at the temples, eyes that were usually warm but tonight seemed guarded. He wore the same charcoal suit he'd had on at their 6 p.m. meeting, though he'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. "I'm protecting your company," he said finally. "Same thing I've been doing for the last 8 months. "By breaking into my office?" "I didn't break in. I have access. Access to the executive floor, not to my personal files. Your personal files are where the problem is." Evelyn stood, letting the blanket fall away. She was still in her work clothes, a midnight blue suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, heels that added 3 inches to her 5'7" frame. Armor, really. She'd learned long ago that looking powerful was half the battle. "Explain that," she said. "Now." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression, a decision being made. "Your assistant, Grace. How long has she worked for you?" 4 years. She came highly recommended. Her background check was immaculate, and this is a very poor attempt at deflection. Her background check was too immaculate. Daniel pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket and laid it on the desk between them. "Grace Chen, graduated top of her class from Columbia, interned at 3 Fortune 500 companies, glowing recommendations from everyone she's ever worked with. Perfect candidate." "Your point?" "My point is that 2 of those Fortune 500 companies don't exist anymore. They were shell corporations, dissolved 6 months after she left them. The third is owned by a subsidiary of Meridian Technologies." Evelyn felt ice slide down her spine. Meridian Technologies was her biggest competitor, run by Marcus Vance, a man who'd been her father's business partner before everything fell apart. A man who'd spent 15 years trying to destroy everything her father built and everything she'd rebuilt from its ruins. "You're suggesting Grace is a corporate spy." "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you that for the last 3 months, every major bid we've lost, every client that's mysteriously chosen Meridian over us, every strategic decision that somehow ended up benefiting our competition, it all traces back to information that Grace had access to." Evelyn's mind raced, sorting through implications and consequences. Grace, who knew her schedule better than she did. Grace, who handled her correspondence, managed her calendar, screened her calls. Grace, who had access to nearly everything except the most sensitive financial data. "If you suspected this, why didn't you come to me?" "Because I wasn't sure who to trust." Daniel's voice softened slightly. "Your father built this company on a foundation that the federal government spent a decade trying to prove was criminal. You inherited it when you were 19, rebuilt it from the ground up, made it legitimate. But there are people, powerful people, who don't believe that's possible, who think the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The FBI." It wasn't a question. "Among others." He held her gaze. "I needed to be certain what I was dealing with before I brought anyone else into it, including you." The admission hung in the air between them. Evelyn processed it, turned it over, examined it from every angle. It made a terrible kind of sense, but it also raised more questions than it answered. "You've been investigating my assistant for 3 months without telling me." "I've been investigating everyone," Daniel corrected. "Grace, your board members, your senior staff, anyone who had access to sensitive information and the means to profit from selling it. Including me." He didn't deny it. "Including you." The honesty of it surprised her. Most people in his position would have lied, deflected, made excuses. Daniel just stood there, meeting her eyes, accepting the consequences of his choices. "And what did your investigation conclude about me?" Evelyn asked, her voice dangerously quiet. That you're brilliant, driven, and possibly the most stubborn person I've ever met. That you care more about your daughter than your empire, which probably makes you a terrible CEO and an excellent mother. That you've spent your entire adult life trying to prove you're nothing like your father, and you're so determined to be better than him that you sometimes miss what's right in front of you. Like my traitorous assistant? Like the fact that not everyone who enters your life is trying to hurt you. The words landed like a punch, unexpected and accurate. Evelyn turned away, moving to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. From this height, the streets were rivers of light, the people invisible. She'd always liked that perspective, the view of someone above it all, untouched by the chaos below. "How long have you been FBI?" she asked. The silence behind her stretched long enough to confirm what she'd already guessed. "Treasury, originally," Daniel said finally. "Financial Crimes Division. But this investigation required a different approach. So Daniel Reed, the CFO, doesn't exist. It's just a cover story." Daniel Reed exists. The credentials are real. The experience is real. I did work for Treasury. I do have a graduate degree in finance from Wharton. The only difference is who's signing my paychecks. Evelyn turned back to face him. "And the daughter you mentioned, the single father routine, that real too, or just part of the cover?" Something flashed across Daniel's face, the first crack in his composure. "Sophie is very real. She's 7 years old, she loves dinosaurs and hates broccoli, and she asks me every single day why her mommy left us. That's not a cover story, that's my life." The rawness in his voice made Evelyn pause. She'd built an empire on reading people, on knowing when someone was lying and when they were showing her something true and vulnerable. This was the latter. "Your daughter and my Emma are in the same class," she said. "They've had play dates. You let your daughter become friends with mine while investigating me for corporate espionage and possible criminal conspiracy." "I let my daughter have a friend because she needs one," Daniel said quietly. "Sophie's mother left 2 years ago. Disappeared in the middle of the night with no explanation, no forwarding address, nothing. Sophie doesn't understand it, and I don't have words to make it make sense to her. But your Emma. Emma treats her like she matters, like she's more than just the weird kid whose mom abandoned her." He stopped, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "So yes, I investigated you. That's my job. But I also let my daughter be happy, because that's my job too. And if you want to hate me for that, fine. But don't pretend the only thing at stake here is your company." Evelyn felt something shift in her chest. She'd been prepared for betrayal, for lies, for another person revealing themselves to be exactly what she'd feared. She hadn't been prepared for honesty, for complexity, for a man who was neither hero nor villain, but something more human than either. "Show me what you found," she said. "All of it." Daniel hesitated. "This is still an active investigation. There are protocols. This is my company. There's a traitor on my staff, possibly on my board. You want me to trust you? Then trust me. Show me everything." For a long moment, they stood there in the lamplight, the city stretching endlessly below them, both of them balanced on the edge of a decision that would change everything. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim tablet. "This doesn't leave this room. If anyone asks, you never saw this. I could lose my career for showing you. And if you don't show me, I could lose my company." "Or your freedom," Daniel said quietly. "There are people in the Bureau who think you're guilty. They think you're continuing your father's work, just with better PR. If they find out I've been sharing classified information with you, then we both have something to lose." Evelyn met his eyes. "But I'm tired of fighting shadows, Daniel. I've been doing it my whole life. Show me who my real enemy is." He handed her the tablet. On the screen was a web of connections, dates, transactions, communications. Grace's name appeared dozens of times, always in proximity to leaked information, always just before a major loss or setback. But Grace wasn't alone. There were other names, other patterns. "You're head of security, Tom Patterson," Daniel said, leaning over her shoulder to point at the screen. "He's been with the company since your father's time. FBI has been watching him for years, but could never make anything stick. 3 of his staff members have connections to known organized crime families. Tom's been loyal to this company for 20 years. or he's been perfectly positioned to protect whoever's really pulling the strings. Daniel swiped to another screen. Board member Richard Hendricks. His investment firm lost $20 million last quarter, but he's living like he just won the lottery. New house in the Hamptons, private school tuition for 3 grandkids, yacht club membership. That doesn't prove, it proves someone's paying him. The question is what for? Another swipe. Your general counsel, Janet Morrison. She's clean as far as we can tell, but her husband runs a consulting firm that does business with Meridian Technologies. Conflict of interest at minimum, active conspiracy at worst. Evelyn's head spun. She was seeing her company, the empire she'd built from her father's tainted legacy, revealed as a house of cards. Everyone she'd trusted, everyone she'd relied on, suddenly suspect. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "If the FBI thinks I'm guilty, showing me your investigation could compromise everything." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Because 3 months ago, I would have bet my career that you were guilty. You had means, motive, opportunity. You inherited a criminal empire and turned it legitimate, or that's what you claimed. Every instinct I had said you were too good to be true. And now? Now I've watched you, really watched you. The way you handle your employees, the way you treat your daughter, the way you make decisions. You're not your father, Evelyn. You're fighting like hell not to be. And that means you deserve to know the truth, even if it costs me everything." The admission hung between them, weighted with implications neither of them was ready to examine. "There's something else," Daniel said, his voice dropping lower. "Something I haven't reported to the Bureau yet." "Why not?" "Because if I'm right, it means this goes higher than corporate espionage, higher than even I'm cleared for." He took the tablet back and pulled up a new file. 2 weeks ago, I flagged an unusual wire transfer from one of your company's accounts. $50 million routed through 3 shell companies before disappearing into a bank in the Cayman Islands. That's impossible. I review every transfer over $10 million personally. You reviewed this one too, or at least you signed off on it. He showed her a digital signature, her signature, on a transfer authorization form. "But I don't think you actually signed this." The timestamp shows it was processed at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. According to your calendar, you were at Emma's school recital that night. Evelyn's blood ran cold. Someone forged my authorization. Someone with access to your digital signature, your security codes, and detailed knowledge of your schedule. Daniel met her eyes. Someone who knew exactly when you'd be too distracted to notice. Grace? Maybe. Probably. But she's not smart enough to set this up alone. The routing through the shell companies, the timing, the way the money disappeared without triggering any automatic fraud alerts. That takes expertise. Professional expertise. You think there's someone else? Someone using Grace? I think Grace is a tool, not a mastermind. Someone recruited her, trained her, positioned her as your assistant 4 years ago. Someone who's been playing a very long game. Evelyn turned back to the window, her mind racing through possibilities and implications. 4 years ago, she'd just closed a major deal that put her company on the map as a legitimate force in the tech sector. 4 years ago, Marcus Vance at Meridian Technologies had tried to block that deal and failed. 4 years ago, she'd received a dozen death threats from people who blamed her father's business dealings for ruining their lives. 4 years ago, someone had decided she needed to be destroyed. "I need to fire Grace," she said. "Tonight, before she realizes we're on to her." "No." Daniel's response was immediate and firm. "If you fire her now, whoever's running her goes underground. We lose our chance to trace this back to its source." "So what? I just let her keep stealing from me?" "You let her think she's still stealing from you while we figure out who she's working for and what they're really after." He moved closer, close enough that she could see the intensity in his eyes. "This isn't just about your company anymore, Evelyn. $50 million doesn't go missing without a reason. Someone's building something, funding something, planning something, and they're using your resources to do it. What do you suggest?" "We set a trap. Feed Grace false information, something valuable enough that whoever's controlling her can't resist acting on it. When they do, we trace it back to its source." "That's incredibly risky." Everything about this is risky. Daniel's voice softened slightly. But I meant what I said before. I don't think you're guilty, and I'm willing to stake my career on proving it. The question is whether you trust me enough to let me try. Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since he'd entered her office. She'd spent 8 months seeing Daniel Reed, the CFO, the financial expert, the competent professional. Now she was seeing someone else, someone who'd lied about who he was, but maybe not about what he cared about. I don't trust easily, she said. My father taught me that people are motivated by self-interest, and the only person you can rely on is yourself. Your father was wrong about a lot of things. Maybe, but he was right about enough that I survived his mistakes. She paused, choosing her words carefully. If we do this, if we set this trap, I need your word that my daughter stays out of it. Emma doesn't get hurt because her mother made enemies. Sophie too, Daniel said immediately. Whatever happens, the girls stay safe. That's non-negotiable. Then we have a deal. Evelyn extended her hand. But if you're lying to me, if this is some elaborate setup to bring me down, I promise you'll regret it. I didn't rebuild my father's empire by being merciful to my enemies. Daniel took her hand. His grip was firm, his skin warm. I'm not your enemy, Evelyn. And if we do this right, by the time we're done, we'll know exactly who is. They stood there, hands clasped, an unlikely alliance formed in the darkness of a corner office while the city slept below them. Neither of them could know that in the weeks to come, they would discover that their real enemy was closer than either imagined, that the trap they set would spring in ways they never anticipated, that the daughters they were trying to protect would become the key to unraveling a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of power. All they knew in that moment was that the game had changed. The silent test was over, and the real war was about to begin. Daniel left first, slipping out of the office at 12:47 a.m. with instructions to continue his normal routine. Nothing could look different. Nothing could suggest that Evelyn knew about Grace, about the investigation, about any of it. Evelyn waited 15 minutes, then made a show of waking up, gathering her things, and leaving for the night. She nodded to the security guard in the lobby, Tom Patterson's nephew, she remembered with a chill, and climbed into her car service. Home, Miss Cross? Her driver asked. Yes, Marcus, home. She pulled out her phone as the car navigated through empty streets. 3 missed calls from Emma's school. No, not the school. From Diane, Emma's nanny. At 11:30 p.m., her heart stopped. She dialed immediately. Diane answered on the first ring. Ms. Cross, I'm so sorry to bother you, but Emma won't go to sleep. She says she had a nightmare and she needs to talk to you. I tried to tell her you were working late, but put her on. A rustling sound, then Emma's voice, small and frightened. Mommy? I'm here, baby. What's wrong? I had a bad dream. Sophie was in it. We were playing at the park, and then these men came and they took us away and you couldn't find us, and Emma's voice broke into tears. Evelyn felt her heart crack. Emma was 8 years old, sensitive and intuitive in ways that sometimes frightened her. She'd inherited her grandmother's artistic temperament, but thankfully not her grandfather's darkness. It was just a dream, sweetheart. You're safe at home with Diane. I'm on my way right now. Promise you won't let anyone take me? I promise. No one's going to take you. You're my whole world, Emma. I would never let anything happen to you. Sophie too? The question surprised her. Why Sophie too? Because she's my best friend, and her daddy works really hard like you do, so she gets scared sometimes too. Promise you'll keep both of us safe? Evelyn closed her eyes, thinking about Daniel Reed and the web of lies and truths they'd woven around their daughters. I promise, baby. Now try to sleep. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up and stared out at the city passing by her window. Somewhere out there, Grace was probably sleeping peacefully, unaware that her cover was blown. Somewhere, Marcus Vance at Meridian Technologies might be planning his next move. Somewhere, people she'd trusted were planning her destruction. But right now, in this moment, all that mattered was getting home to her daughter. The car pulled up to her building, a converted brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, far from the Manhattan towers where she worked. She'd chosen it deliberately, wanting Emma to grow up somewhere that felt like a neighborhood rather than a fortress. Diane met her at the door, apologetic and worried. She finally fell asleep about 10 minutes ago, but she was really upset. "It's fine, Diane. Thank you for calling me. You can head home." Evelyn climbed the stairs to Emma's room, a space filled with artwork and books and a collection of rocks that Emma insisted all had special properties. Her daughter was curled up in bed, her dark hair spread across the pillow, one arm clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. She looked so small, so vulnerable. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, brushing hair from Emma's forehead. Her daughter stirred, opening eyes that were the same green as her own. "Mommy? I'm here, baby. Is Sophie okay?" "Sophie's fine. She's safe at home with her daddy." Emma nodded, already drifting back to sleep. "Good. I don't want anything bad to happen to her. She's had too many bad things already." The words struck Evelyn hard. Emma didn't know about Sophie's mother leaving, but somehow she'd sensed the sadness in her friend. Children were like that sometimes, picking up on emotional currents that adults tried to hide. "Nothing bad is going to happen," Evelyn whispered. "I promise." But even as she said it, she wondered if it was a promise she could keep. Because somewhere in her company, in her carefully constructed empire, there was a traitor, and whoever was pulling their strings had already proven they could reach into her life, forge her signature, steal her money. What else could they take? She stayed with Emma until she was certain her daughter was deeply asleep, then retreated to her own room. But instead of sleeping, she opened her laptop and began reviewing everything Daniel had shown her. The patterns, the connections, the web of betrayal that had been woven around her. At 3:17 a.m., she found something. A small discrepancy in one of Grace's expense reports from 6 months ago. A hotel in D.C. charged to the company card on a weekend when there was no business reason for Grace to be in D.C. Evelyn cross-referenced the date with her calendar. That weekend, she'd taken Emma to her grandmother's house upstate. She'd mentioned it to Grace in passing, asking her to reschedule a Monday meeting. Grace had known she'd be gone. Grace had known the office would be empty. What had she been doing in D.C.? Evelyn pulled up Grace's credit card history, something she rarely reviewed but had full access to as CEO. More charges in D.C. Restaurants, car rentals, a shopping trip to a boutique jewelry store. Who paid for jewelry on a business trip? She dug deeper, pulling up phone records. Grace had made 17 calls that weekend, all to the same number, a number with a Virginia area code. Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she ran the number through a reverse lookup service. The result made her blood run cold. The number belonged to a law office, not just any law office. Hendricks, Morrison, and Vance, the firm that Richard Hendricks, her board member, had founded before joining her company. The firm that Janet Morrison's husband still worked for. The firm that Marcus Vance's brother was a partner in. They were all connected, all of them. The board member, the general counsel's husband, Grace. And behind them all, like a spider in the center of a web, was Marcus Vance, her father's former partner. The man who'd testified against him in the federal investigation that had destroyed everything. The man who'd sworn vengeance when Evelyn rebuilt the company bigger and better than her father ever had. This wasn't about corporate espionage. This was personal. Evelyn's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Found something. Can't discuss on monitored channels. Tomorrow, 6 a.m., Brooklyn Bridge Park. Come alone. It was from Daniel. She was sure of it. She texted back, "How do I know I can trust you?" The response came immediately. "You don't." But Sophie had a nightmare tonight, too. About Emma. "They're connected, Evelyn. Our daughters are connected. Which means we're in this together, whether we like it or not." Evelyn stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed, 6 a.m., I'll be there. She closed her laptop and finally lay down, though she knew sleep wouldn't come. In 6 hours, she'd meet Daniel Reed, federal agent, single father, her CFO, her investigator, possibly her only ally, and together they'd figure out how to fight an enemy who'd spent 4 years positioning pieces on a board she hadn't even known she was playing on. But first, she'd lie here in the darkness and listen to her daughter breathe, safe and sound in the next room. For now, that would have to be enough. At 5:47 a.m., Evelyn stood at the railing of Brooklyn Bridge Park, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. The park was nearly empty. A few joggers, a woman walking 3 dogs, a homeless man sleeping on a bench near the carousel. Daniel appeared exactly at 6 a.m., wearing jeans and a dark jacket, looking less like a CFO and more like what he really was. He carried 2 coffee cups from the bodega near her house. He'd remembered how she took it, black, no sugar. Couldn't sleep either? He asked, handing her a cup. Found something at 3 a.m. Couldn't stop thinking about it. She showed him the connection she'd found, watching his expression shift from interest to concern to something that might have been anger. Vance, he said quietly. It always comes back to Vance. You knew? Suspected, but I couldn't prove it. He's too careful, keeps himself 3 steps removed from anything actionable. Daniel stared out at the water. Your father and Vance built that company together. When the feds came after your father, Vance flipped. Testified against him, walked away clean, started Meridian with money that probably came from their joint ventures. My father went to prison. Vance got rich. And when your father died and you rebuilt the company, Vance saw it as a threat. You were better than both of them combined. Cleaner, smarter, more legitimate. You proved that the empire could exist without the corruption. That made you dangerous to him. Evelyn felt pieces clicking into place. So he spent 4 years positioning Grace as my assistant, planting people on my board, buying off my security chief, building a case that I was just like my father, continuing his criminal enterprise. And when the FBI finally had enough evidence to move against you, Vance would be there to scoop up your company's assets for pennies on the dollar, just like he did with your father. Daniel turned to face her. But there's more, something I found last night that I shouldn't have access to. Tell me. The $50 million that disappeared? It didn't just vanish, it was moved into an account registered to Emma Cross. The world tilted. What? Someone set up a trust fund in your daughter's name, filled it with stolen money from your company. If the FBI raids your accounts, they find $50 million in illegal funds connected to an 8-year-old child. They'd take her from me. Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. They'd say I was using her to hide assets, that I was unfit, that you're exactly like your father. Daniel's hand found hers on the railing. That's the plan, Evelyn. Not just to destroy your company, to destroy you completely, to take everything you love and leave you with nothing. The morning sun felt cold on her skin. She thought about Emma's nightmare, about her daughter's fear of being taken away. Children knew things sometimes, felt things. We have to stop him, she said, whatever it takes. Agreed, but we have to be smart about it. Vance has been planning this for years. We have days, maybe weeks, before he makes his final move. So what do we do? Daniel was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. It was Sophie and Emma at school, arms around each other, both grinning at the camera. We use the one thing Vance won't expect, he said. We work together. FBI agent and suspected criminal. Single father and single mother. 2 people who should be enemies but are fighting for the same thing. Our daughters. Our daughters, Daniel confirmed. And maybe, if we're lucky, the truth. Evelyn looked at the photo, at her daughter's happy smile, at the friendship that had formed without either parent planning it. Sophie and Emma, connected by something innocent and pure in the middle of all this darkness. I'm in, she said. Whatever you need. Whatever it takes. Daniel nodded. Then we start by feeding Grace exactly what she wants to hear. We create a paper trail that makes you look guilty as hell, but a paper trail we control. We make Vance think he's won. And when he makes his move, we'll be ready. Daniel's jaw tightened. But Evelyn, you need to understand what you're risking. If this goes wrong, you don't just lose your company. You could lose Emma. The FBI could charge you, take her into protective custody while you fight the case. I've seen it happen. Then we don't let it go wrong. It's not that simple, like, yes, it is. Evelyn turned to face him fully. You said you'd stake your career on proving I'm innocent. I'm staking my daughter's future on it, so we don't have the luxury of failure. We find evidence that clears me and buries Vance, and we do it before he makes his next move. She could see Daniel weighing it, calculating the odds, the risks, the potential for disaster. He was careful by nature, methodical. It's what made him good at his job. But she was right, and they both knew it. Okay, he said finally. We do this together. But we do it my way. Careful, controlled, by the book wherever possible. Agreed. They stood there as the sun rose higher, warming the air, burning off the morning mist. Somewhere across the river, in Manhattan towers and corporate boardrooms, their enemies were waking up, making plans, moving pieces. But here, in this moment, Evelyn Cross and Daniel Reed had become something unexpected. Allies, partners, maybe even friends. The question was whether that would be enough to save them when the real battle began. The coffee had gone cold in Evelyn's hand by the time they left the park, but she barely noticed. Her mind was already 3 steps ahead, cataloging everything that needed to happen, every risk that needed to be managed, every lie that needed to be carefully constructed. Grace gets to the office at 7:30, she said as they walked toward the street where Daniel's car was parked. I need to be there by 7, acting completely normal. She can't suspect anything's changed. Agreed. I'll come in at my usual time, 8:15. We interact exactly the way we always do. Professional, cordial, nothing more. Daniel pulled out his keys. Can I give you a ride? Your car service doesn't start until 7:30. Evelyn hesitated. Accepting felt like crossing a line, moving from allies of convenience to something more familiar. But practicality won out. Thank you. His car was a sensible sedan, not the luxury vehicle she would have expected from a CFO of a major corporation. The back seat held a booster seat and a scattered collection of books about dinosaurs. Evidence of Sophie, of the real life Daniel led beyond his cover identity. She really does love dinosaurs, Evelyn said, picking up a book about velociraptors. Obsessed. Last week she informed me that she's going to be a paleontologist and discover a new species and name it after herself. Sophie's Maximum Terribleness, or something like that. He smiled, and for a moment the weight lifted from his face. Emma ever go through a dinosaur phase? She's more into art and music. Last month she decided she wanted to learn piano, so now we have a Steinway Grand taking up half our living room. Evelyn paused. She talks about Sophie constantly. I didn't realize how close they'd become until last night. Sophie's the same way. Emma said this. Emma thinks that. It's good for her, having a friend who doesn't treat her like she's damaged because her mother left. The rawness in his voice made Evelyn look at him more carefully. You don't talk about it much. Your ex-wife. Because there's not much to say. We were married for 3 years, she got pregnant, Sophie was born, and 2 years later I came home from work and found a note saying she couldn't do this anymore. No explanation, no forwarding address, no contact since. The lawyers I hired to track her down found nothing. It's like she vanished. That must have been terrifying for Sophie. Sophie was too young to understand at first. She just knew Mommy was gone and wasn't coming back. Now she's old enough to know she was abandoned, but not old enough to process why someone would do that. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The worst part is wondering if I missed something, if there were signs I should have seen. Evelyn understood that feeling intimately. She'd spent years wondering if she'd missed signs about her father, about the illegal activities that had destroyed their family. Wondering if she could have stopped it, if she'd just paid more attention. You can't blame yourself for other people's choices, she said quietly. Trust me, I've tried. It doesn't help. They drove in silence for a few blocks before Daniel spoke again. The Bureau's going to want updates soon. They expect me to have something concrete on you within the next 2 weeks. What will you tell them? That I'm close. That you're careful, but I'm gaining your trust, that I need more time. He glanced at her. They won't like it, but they'll accept it. For now. And when they stop accepting it, then we'd better have enough evidence to take down Vance that they don't care about me anymore. They pulled up to her building just as the first light was hitting the brownstone's windows. Emma would still be sleeping, blissfully unaware of the war being waged around her. Tonight, Daniel said as she reached for the door handle, I'm going to need you to do something that will look bad. Really bad. What? Transfer another $10 million from the company accounts. Make it look sloppy, like you're getting desperate. Grace will report it immediately, and whoever's watching will think you're starting to panic. That makes the case against me stronger. It makes the trap more convincing. Trust me. That word again. Trust. Evelyn looked at Daniel Reed, this man who'd lied about his identity, but maybe not about his intentions, and made a choice that would have horrified her careful, controlled self from 24 hours ago. Okay, I'll do it. His expression shifted, surprise mixing with something that might have been respect. Just like that? Just like that. You said we're in this together. That means I have to trust you to know what you're doing. She opened the door, then paused. But Daniel, if you're wrong, if this backfires and they take Emma from me, I will make you regret it, federal agent or not. If I'm wrong and they take Emma, I'll deserve whatever you do to me. She believed him. That was the terrifying part. Evelyn let herself into the building and climbed the stairs to her apartment. Inside, everything was peaceful. Diane had left a note saying Emma had slept through the night after Evelyn's visit. The breakfast dishes were set out, ready for when Emma woke up. Normal. Everything looked so beautifully, perfectly normal. She showered, dressed in her armor of a tailored suit and heels, and kissed Emma's sleeping forehead before heading to the office. By 7 a.m., she was at her desk, reviewing the overnight emails as if this were any other Wednesday morning. Grace arrived at 7:28, precisely 2 minutes early as always. She was in her late 20s, attractive in a professional way, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Good morning, Ms. Cross. You're in early." "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get a jump on the week." Evelyn kept her voice casual, her attention apparently focused on her computer screen. "Any updates I should know about?" "The Henderson contract came through late yesterday. Legal wants your signature by Friday, and you have lunch with the mayor's office at noon. They're pushing for that affordable housing initiative again." "Cancel the lunch. I need to focus on the quarterly reports today." Grace's fingers flew across her tablet, making the change. "Done. Anything else?" "Actually, yes. I need you to set up a private meeting with Richard Hendricks. Today, if possible, but don't go through his assistant. Call his personal cell." For just a moment, something flickered across Grace's face. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. His personal cell? I'm not sure I have that number. "You do. I saw you talking to him at the charity gala last month. You seemed quite friendly." Evelyn looked up, meeting Grace's eyes with a bland smile. "I need to discuss some sensitive board matters. Very confidential." "Of course. I'll reach out right away." Grace left, and Evelyn counted to 10 before pulling up the monitoring software Daniel had installed on her computer the night before. Within 90 seconds, Grace had made a call, not to Richard Hendricks, but to a number with a Virginia area code. The same number from the weekend in D.C. Evelyn took a screenshot and sent it to the encrypted phone Daniel had given her. His response came immediately. "Good. She's rattled. Keep pushing." The morning passed in a carefully orchestrated dance. Evelyn behaved exactly as she always did, attending meetings, reviewing reports, making decisions. But underneath, she was watching, observing, learning the patterns of betrayal that had been happening under her nose for 4 years. At 11:30, Richard Hendricks appeared in her office doorway. He was in his early 60s, distinguished-looking with silver hair and expensive suits. He'd been on her board for 3 years, always supportive, always reliable, always selling her secrets to Marcus Vance. "Evelyn, Grace said you needed to see me urgently." "Richard, come in. Close the door." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "We have a problem." His expression shifted to concern, perfectly practiced. "What kind of problem?" "The SEC is asking questions about some of our offshore accounts. Nothing serious yet, but I want to be prepared. You have experience with this kind of thing from your previous firm." It was a lie, carefully constructed. There was no SEC inquiry. But she watched Hendricks process the information, saw the slight relaxation in his shoulders, the quick calculation behind his eyes. "I see. That is concerning. What specifically are they asking about?" "The Cayman accounts. The ones we set up for the international expansion." Another lie. Those accounts were completely legitimate. "I'm worried they might try to freeze assets while they investigate. I need to move some funds, quietly, before that happens." "That could look like you're trying to hide something. Or it could look like I'm protecting the company's liquidity, but I need it done today, Richard. Can you help me?" He hesitated, and she could see him thinking through the implications. If she was moving money, panicking, it meant she was vulnerable. It meant whatever plan Vance had was working. "Of course," he said finally. "I know some people. Discreet people. How much are we talking about? 10 million to start, more if necessary. His eyebrows rose. That's substantial. These are substantial concerns. She leaned forward. I need to know I can count on your discretion, Richard. The rest of the board can't know about this. If word gets out that we're being investigated, even falsely, it could tank our stock price. You have my word. I'll make some calls this afternoon. After he left, Evelyn sat very still, processing what she'd just done. She'd lied to a board member, implied illegal activity, and set in motion a transfer that would make her look guilty of exactly what the FBI suspected. Daniel was right. This did look really bad. Her encrypted phone buzzed. Hendricks just called Vance. Meeting set for tonight at 7 p.m. at Vance's office. Whatever you said, it worked. Evelyn typed back. Now what? Now we see who else comes to the meeting, and we find out exactly what they're planning. The afternoon crawled by. Evelyn forced herself to maintain her normal routine, even as her mind raced through scenarios and possibilities. At 3:30, her personal phone rang. Emma's school. Her heart stopped. Ms. Cross, this is Principal Martinez. Everything's fine, but I wanted to let you know that Emma got into a small altercation at recess today. What kind of altercation? Some older boys were teasing Sophie Reed about her mother. Emma intervened quite forcefully. No one was hurt, but I thought you should know. Evelyn closed her eyes, feeling a fierce pride mixed with worry. Is Emma all right? She's fine. A bit defiant, actually. She said that people who pick on her friends deserve whatever they get. Principal Martinez sounded almost amused. I've called Mr. Reed as well. The boys have been spoken to, and I don't anticipate further problems. Thank you for letting me know. After she hung up, Evelyn found herself smiling despite everything. Her daughter had her father's sense of justice, but her mother's fierce protectiveness. It was a dangerous combination. Her encrypted phone buzzed again. This time it was a call, not a text. She answered immediately. Sophie told me what happened, Daniel said without preamble. Apparently Emma defended her honor by telling 3 fifth-grade boys that they were mean and stupid and their mothers should be ashamed. Direct quote. She's not wrong. No, she's not. Daniel's voice softened. But it worries me, Evelyn. The girls are getting closer. If this thing with Vance goes sideways, if they come after you or me, the kids are going to be caught in the middle. They're already in the middle. Sophie's in Emma's nightmare. Emma's defending Sophie at school. Whatever's happening here, our daughters feel it. Then we need to end it, fast. She heard background noise, voices. I have to go. Bureau's calling a briefing. But tonight, after the Vance meeting, I'll have more information. Be careful. You too. The call ended and Evelyn sat in her silent office, looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, Marcus Vance was preparing for a meeting that would determine her fate. Somewhere, Richard Hendricks was making calls, setting up the fake money transfer, tightening the noose around her neck. And somewhere, 2 little girls were learning that the world wasn't always fair, but friendship was worth fighting for. At 6 p.m., she left the office. Grace was still at her desk, probably waiting to see if Evelyn did anything suspicious. Evelyn made a show of seeming distracted, tense, exactly how someone panicking about an SEC investigation might look. She went home, had dinner with Emma, listened to her daughter's passionate defense of why bullies were the worst people in the world. She helped with homework, supervised bath time, read bedtime stories. She did all the normal things that mothers do, while her phone sat heavy in her pocket, waiting for news that could change everything. At 8:15, the encrypted phone buzzed. Meeting happened. Recorded everything. You need to hear this. Can you get away? Evelyn looked at Emma, already drowsy with her stuffed elephant clutched tight. Baby, Mommy needs to go back to the office for a little while. Diane's going to stay with you. Do you have to? I do, but I'll be home before you wake up. I promise. She called Diane, who lived in the building and arrived within minutes. Then she took a cab to a location Daniel had texted her, a parking garage in Red Hook, far from anywhere they might be recognized. Daniel was waiting in his car, his face grim in the dim light. She slid into the passenger seat, and he handed her an earbud. This is going to be hard to hear, he warned, but you need to know exactly what we're dealing with. He pressed play. The recording quality was excellent, probably from a wire Daniel had been wearing. She heard voices, greetings, the scrape of chairs, then Marcus Vance's voice, and smooth and cultured and absolutely certain. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. I assume we all understand the sensitivity of this meeting. Richard Hendricks. Evelyn contacted me today. She's panicking, wants to move 10 million offshore. Vance. Perfect. Let her. The more desperate moves she makes, the easier it will be to prove intent. What about the trust fund? A third voice, one Evelyn didn't recognize. The 50 million is secure in the Emma Cross Trust. If the FBI moves tomorrow, they'll find it immediately. Combined with the new transfer, we'll have clear evidence of money laundering using a minor child. Evelyn felt sick. Vance. And our friend in the Bureau? Is he still convinced she's guilty? The third voice again. He's wavering. Reed seems to be developing doubts, but his supervisor is firmly on board. She's convinced this is a continuation of Robert Cross's criminal enterprise. Daniel's hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing tight. She held on like a lifeline. Vance. Then we accelerate the timeline. I want the FBI raid scheduled for Friday morning. Hit her at home, in front of the daughter. Maximum trauma, maximum publicity. By Friday afternoon, Evelyn Cross will be in custody, her company's assets will be frozen, and I'll be positioned to acquire everything at auction. Hendricks. What about Reed? If he's having doubts... Vance. Reed is irrelevant. His job was to build the case. Once the arrest happens, he's done. If he tries to speak out afterward, we'll bury him. I have enough dirt on his ex-wife to make his life very complicated. The recording continued, but Evelyn couldn't hear it over the roaring in her ears. Friday morning, 2 days away. They were going to arrest her in front of Emma, traumatize her daughter deliberately, destroy everything she'd built. Turn it off, she whispered. Daniel stopped the recording. They sat in silence, the darkness pressing in around them. There's more, Daniel said quietly. After the meeting, I followed the third man. Evelyn, it was Tom Patterson, your head of security. Tom. She'd known it was possible, but hearing it confirmed felt like a physical blow. He's been with us for 20 years, since before my father died. He was probably your father's inside man. When Vance testified against your father, Patterson stayed in place, a long-term asset waiting to be activated. Daniel's voice was tight with anger. He's been feeding Vance information this whole time. He knew when you'd be vulnerable, when to place Grace, how to position the pieces. Evelyn forced herself to breathe, to think. You said his supervisor is convinced I'm guilty. Can you go over her head? Not without proof. Right now it's my word against Patterson's, and he has seniority, connections, 20 years of clean service. I'd need evidence so overwhelming that they can't ignore it. The recording was obtained without a warrant while I was off duty. Inadmissible in court, possibly illegal. If I try to use it, I get fired and Vance walks free. He turned to face her. But there's another way. Tell me. We let them think they've won. You make the 10 million transfer tomorrow, exactly as planned. Patterson reports it, the Bureau gets their warrant, they plan the Friday raid. But we'll be ready. Ready how? I've been documenting everything, every conversation with Patterson, every report he's filed, every piece of evidence he's planted. If we can catch him in the act, if we can prove he's working for Vance, then everything else falls apart. The 50 million in Emma's trust, the forged authorizations, all of it becomes part of his conspiracy, not yours. Evelyn's mind raced. But they'd still raid my house, still traumatize Emma. Not if we move first. Tomorrow night, Thursday, I'll get you and Emma somewhere safe, somewhere Patterson can't track. When the raid happens Friday morning, you won't be there. That makes me look guilty, like I'm fleeing. It makes you look smart. And it buys us time to prove Patterson's involvement before they formally charge you. Daniel's eyes were intense. It's risky. If we can't prove it fast enough, the FBI will classify you as a fugitive, but it's better than letting them arrest you in front of your daughter. Evelyn thought about Emma's nightmare, about being taken away. She thought about her daughter's face if federal agents showed up at their door at dawn, guns drawn, shouting commands. Where would we go? I have a place, a cabin upstate, registered under a different name. No connection to me or the Bureau. You and Emma would be safe there while I work on getting the evidence we need. You're asking me to run, to hide. I'm asking you to survive. Daniel's voice softened. Look, I know this isn't what you wanted. You wanted to stand and fight, to prove you're nothing like your father. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is protect your child, even if it makes you look weak." He was right. She hated that he was right. "What about Sophie?" she asked. "If you're helping me, if Vance finds out, they'll come after her too." "Sophie's already at the cabin. I sent her upstate this morning with my sister. She thinks it's a fun surprise vacation." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I'm not taking chances with my daughter either." The fact that he'd already moved Sophie, already committed to this plan before even talking to her, should have made Evelyn angry. Instead, she found it oddly reassuring. He wasn't asking her to risk her child while his stayed safe. They were both jumping off the cliff together. "Okay," she said. "Tomorrow night. How do we do this?" Daniel pulled out a tablet and showed her a detailed plan. The next 2 hours passed in careful coordination, going over every detail, every contingency, every risk. By the time they finished, it was nearly midnight. "I should get home," Evelyn said. "Emma will worry if I'm gone too long." "Evelyn." Daniel's hand caught her wrist as she reached for the door. "When this is over, when we've taken down Vance and cleared your name, we need to talk. About what comes after." "After?" "After I'm no longer investigating you. After I'm no longer your CFO. After we're just two single parents whose kids are best friends." He looked at her steadily. "Because somewhere in the middle of all this, I started caring about what happens to you. Not as a case, not as a target, as a person." The admission hung between them, dangerous and tempting and completely inappropriate given their circumstances. Evelyn should have pulled away, should have kept the professional distance that had served her so well. Instead, she said, "When this is over, we'll talk. But Daniel, if you're doing this because you feel sorry for me or because you think I'm some damsel who needs rescuing, I'm doing this because you're brilliant and fierce and you've spent your whole life fighting to be better than your father's legacy. Because your daughter is growing up to be just like you, and that's a gift. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped being able to imagine a future where I watch you go to prison for crimes you didn't commit." He released her wrist. "And maybe because Sophie deserves a friend like Emma, and Emma deserves a friend like Sophie, and we're the only parents those girls have." Evelyn felt something crack open in her chest, some carefully guarded part of herself she'd kept locked away since her father's arrest. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "Then I'll only promise this. I will do everything in my power to make sure you and Emma come out of this safe. The rest we'll figure out later." It wasn't a declaration of love or even friendship. It was something more honest, a commitment to try, to fight, to see this through together. "Okay," she said softly. "Tomorrow night. I'll be ready." She took a cab home, slipping into the apartment quietly. Diane was asleep on the couch, Emma safe in her bed. Evelyn stood in her daughter's doorway for a long time, watching her sleep, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the way her hand curled around her stuffed elephant. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she'd become a fugitive, running from the law with her daughter. Tomorrow, she'd put her faith completely in a man she'd only truly known for 2 days. But tonight, Emma was safe. And sometimes, that had to be enough. She was about to turn away when Emma stirred, her eyes opening in the dim light from the hallway. "Mommy? I'm here, baby. I had another dream, but this time it was good." "Yeah? What happened?" Emma smiled sleepily. "Sophie and me were safe, and you and her daddy were there too. We were all together, and nobody was scared anymore." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "That sounds like a beautiful dream." "It wasn't a dream, though. It was real. I could tell." Emma yawned. "Sophie says her daddy is good at protecting people. Is that true?" "Yes, baby. That's true." "Good. Because you need someone to help protect you, too. You can't do everything by yourself, Mommy." The wisdom of 8-year-olds. Sometimes they saw things more clearly than adults ever could. "You're right," Evelyn whispered. "I can't do everything by myself. But I can keep you safe. That's all that matters." "You and me and Sophie and her daddy," Emma murmured, already drifting back to sleep. "We're all going to be okay. I know it." Evelyn kissed her daughter's forehead and retreated to her own room. She should sleep, should rest before the chaos of tomorrow. Instead, she sat by her window watching the city lights and thought about Daniel's question. What came after? If they survived this, if they took down Vance and cleared her name and kept their daughter safe, what kind of life waited on the other side? Could she trust someone again? Could she open herself up to the possibility of partnership, of something more than just surviving alone? Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel on the encrypted line. Sophie just told me Emma's going to be her sister someday. Kids say the strangest things. Evelyn smiled despite herself and typed back, Emma told me we're all going to be okay. She seemed very certain. They're kids. They still believe in happy endings. Maybe we should too. The response came quickly. Maybe we should. Get some sleep, Evelyn. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. You too, Daniel. And thank you for believing me. Thank you for trusting me. I know that doesn't come easy for you. She set the phone down and finally let herself sleep. Tomorrow would bring danger and uncertainty and the hardest choice she'd ever made. But tonight, for the first time in 4 years, she wasn't entirely alone in the fight. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to win. Thursday morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Evelyn made Emma pancakes shaped like hearts, packed her lunch with extra cookies, and braided her hair while listening to her chatter about the science project she was working on with Sophie. Everything felt suspended in amber, precious and fragile and about to shatter. Mommy, you're being weird, Emma said, studying her reflection in the hallway mirror. You keep looking at me like I'm going to disappear. Just appreciating how beautiful you are. Evelyn kissed the top of her daughter's head. Sometimes I forget how fast you're growing up. I'm only 8. I'm not growing up that fast. But Emma smiled, pleased by the attention. The school drop-off was torture. Evelyn watched Emma run to meet Sophie on the playground, the two girls immediately falling into animated conversation. Daniel was there too, standing near the fence with the other parents, looking tired but composed. Their eyes met across the distance, a silent acknowledgement of what was coming. Tonight. Everything changed tonight. At the office, Evelyn executed the $10 million transfer exactly as Richard Hendricks had arranged. Her hands trembled slightly as she entered the authorization codes, knowing that this single action would cement the FBI's case against her. But it was necessary. The bait had to be believable. Grace appeared in her doorway 20 minutes later, tablet in hand, eyes too bright. Ms. Cross, I just got an alert about a large transfer from the main operating account. $10 million to an offshore entity. I wanted to confirm that was intentional. It was. Private matter, nothing to concern yourself with. Evelyn kept her voice bored, dismissive. Is there anything else? No, I just wanted to make sure everything was all right. Everything's fine, Grace. You can go. She watched Grace leave, watched her stop by the elevators to make a phone call, watched her smile as whoever was on the other end gave her good news. Within the hour, Tom Patterson would know. Within 2 hours, the FBI would have their warrant. By tomorrow morning, federal agents would be surrounding her brownstone. But she wouldn't be there. The day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Evelyn attended meetings, approved contracts, made decisions about things that suddenly seemed utterly meaningless compared to what she was about to do. At 3 p.m., she called Diane. I need you to pick up Emma from school today. There's been a change of plans. Is everything all right? Diane's voice carried concern. Everything's fine, but Emma and I are taking a little trip, a surprise vacation. Can you pack a bag for her? Clothes for about a week, her favorite stuffed animals, some books. Nothing fancy, just comfortable things. Of course. Where are you going? Upstate. Fresh air, some time away from the city. We both need it. She could hear the hesitation in Diane's voice. Ms. Cross, is something wrong? You sound... I'm just tired. It's been a difficult few weeks. Evelyn softened her tone. Thank you for everything, Diane. You've been wonderful with Emma. I've left an envelope for you at the apartment with 2 months' pay. Consider it a bonus. 2 months? Miss Cross, just in case we decide to extend the vacation, I'll be in touch. She hung up before Diane could ask more questions. The envelope she'd mentioned contained 6 months' pay and a letter of recommendation. Because if things went badly, if she couldn't prove her innocence, Diane would need to find a new position quickly. At 4 p.m., Daniel sent a text to her encrypted phone. Everything's set. Pick up Emma at 6. Address attached. Come alone. Make sure you're not followed. Evelyn spent the next hour quietly gathering personal items from her office. The photo of Emma on her desk. The fountain pen her father had given her before he died. One of the few possessions she'd kept from that life. A flash drive containing backup files of everything important. She moved carefully, casually, giving no indication that she was saying goodbye to this space. At 5:30, she left the office for the last time, though only she knew it. Grace looked up from her desk with that bright, false smile. "Have a good evening, Ms. Cross." "You too, Grace." Evelyn paused. "Actually, why don't you take tomorrow off? You've been working hard lately. You deserve a break." Grace's smile faltered slightly. "Tomorrow? But we have the quarterly review meeting. I'll handle it myself. Consider it a thank you for all your dedication." Evelyn held her gaze. "Loyalty is so rare these days. I appreciate knowing who I can trust." The words hung in the air, laden with meaning that only Evelyn understood. Grace nodded slowly, uncertainty crossing her face for the first time since Evelyn had known her. "Thank you, Ms. Cross. That's very generous." Evelyn walked away, out of the building into the evening air. She didn't look back. The address Daniel had sent was a parking garage in Queens, anonymous and forgotten. She took 2 different cabs to get there, watching for tails, seeing nothing but normal city traffic. Daniel's sedan was waiting on the 3rd level, and Emma was in the back seat next to Sophie, both girls playing some game on a tablet, completely oblivious to the tension radiating from the adults. "Mommy!" Emma's face lit up. "Sophie's coming on vacation with us, and her daddy too. Isn't that cool?" "Very cool, baby." Evelyn slid into the passenger seat, meeting Daniel's eyes. "Any trouble?" "None. Patterson's focused on tomorrow morning's raid. He has no idea we're already gone." Daniel put the car in gear. "The cabin's about 3 hours north. We should arrive by 9:30, maybe 10. The drive through the city was tense, both adults hyper-aware of every car around them, every potential threat. But once they hit the highway and left the urban sprawl behind, some of the pressure eased. The girls chattered in the back seat, delighted by the unexpected adventure, making plans for all the things they'd do together. "Can we go swimming?" Sophie asked. "The lake's probably too cold still," Daniel said. "But there's a creek nearby. We can look for frogs." "Emma loves frogs." Sophie turned to her friend. "Did you know that some frogs can change colors? It's called camouflage. They do it to hide from predators." "That's so cool. I wish I could change colors. Then I could turn invisible and nobody could find me ever." Evelyn felt her chest tighten. The innocence of that statement, the childish wish for a power that Evelyn herself would have given anything for right now. The ability to simply disappear, to escape all the eyes watching her, judging her, waiting for her to fail. Daniel's hand found hers between the seats, a brief squeeze of understanding. She held on longer than necessary. The cabin appeared as they wound down a dirt road, headlights cutting through darkness under a canopy of trees. It was small but well-maintained, with a front porch and windows that glowed with warm light. Daniel's sister must have arrived earlier to open it up. "It's like a fairy tale house," Emma breathed, pressed against the window. "Wait till you see inside," Daniel said. "There's a loft bedroom just for you girls." The interior was rustic but comfortable. Wood-paneled walls, a stone fireplace, furniture that looked handmade. Daniel's sister met them at the door. A woman in her 40s with Daniel's same dark eyes and warm smile. "You must be Evelyn and Emma. I'm Kate." She ushered them inside. "The girls' room is upstairs, already made up. There's food in the kitchen, firewood stacked on the porch. I'll head out now and give you folks some space." "Thank you," Evelyn said. "For all of this." Kate's expression turned serious. "My brother's a good man. If he says you're innocent, I believe him. You keep those girls safe and we'll sort out the rest." She hugged Daniel. "Be careful, and call me if you need anything." After Kate left, the 4 of them stood in the small living room, the reality of the situation settling over them. They were fugitives now, hiding in the woods while federal agents prepared to raid Evelyn's home at dawn. "Okay, girls," Daniel said with forced cheer, "how about we get you 2 settled upstairs and then Ms. Cross and I will make some dinner." The girls needed no further encouragement. racing up the narrow stairs to explore their temporary domain. Evelyn could hear their excited voices, the thump of feet on wooden floors, the sound of children who believed this was an adventure rather than a crisis. In the kitchen, she and Daniel worked in silence for a while, pulling together a simple meal of pasta and salad. The domesticity of it was surreal, chopping vegetables side by side, moving around each other in the small space, acting like a normal couple preparing a normal dinner. "Your sister seems nice," Evelyn said finally. "She is. Raised me after our parents died. I was 15, she was 23, barely old enough to be a parent herself, but she fought the state to keep me out of foster care, worked 2 jobs, made sure I graduated high school, and got into college." Daniel's voice was soft with affection. "She's the reason I became a federal agent. Wanted to be someone she could be proud of." "I'm sure she is proud. You're a good father to Sophie." "I try. Some days are harder than others." He paused, knife stilling on the cutting board. "After my wife left, Kate offered to take Sophie, said maybe it would be easier if Sophie had a mother figure, but I couldn't do it. She's my daughter, my responsibility." That must have been incredibly difficult. It was, but it was also the right choice. Sophie needed to know that I wasn't going anywhere, that she could count on me, even if her mother couldn't. He looked at Evelyn. "Kind of like how Emma needs to know you're not going anywhere, that you'll fight for her no matter what it costs. Even if fighting means running. Especially if fighting means running. Because you're not running away, Evelyn. You're running toward a solution. There's a difference." Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. The girls entertained them with elaborate stories about their school day, their plans for summer vacation, their theories about which dinosaurs would win in various hypothetical battles. For a few hours, they could almost pretend this was normal, that they were just 2 families enjoying an evening together. But after the girls were settled in bed, reality crashed back in. Daniel spread papers across the kitchen table. Surveillance photos, financial records, documented communications. Everything he'd gathered on Marcus Vance, Tom Patterson, Richard Hendricks, Grace. It was extensive, detailed, damning. But was it enough? "The raid happens at 6 a.m., Daniel said, checking his phone. "Patterson will lead it personally. He's convinced you'll be there, probably planning to flee. When they find the house empty, he'll issue a warrant for your arrest. You'll be classified as a fugitive by 7. "How long do we have before they trace us here?" "Depends on how good Patterson is. This place is registered to Kate's ex-husband, who moved to Oregon 3 years ago. No obvious connection to me. But if they dig deep enough, if they really want to find you, maybe a week, maybe less. So we have a week to prove Patterson's working for Vance. We have a week to get enough evidence that the FBI can't ignore it. Evidence that's admissible in court, obtained legally, airtight." Daniel ran his hand through his hair in frustration. "The recording I made isn't enough. I need something more. Something that directly ties Patterson to the money, to the forgeries, to the conspiracy." Evelyn studied the papers, looking for patterns, connections. Her mind worked the way it always did when facing a complex problem. Systematically, thoroughly, refusing to accept defeat. There had to be something they were missing, some thread they hadn't pulled. "The $50 million in Emma's trust," she said slowly. "Who set up the account?" "According to the paperwork you did, or someone using your credentials. But to set up a trust, you need more than just credentials. You need to appear in person at the bank, show identification, sign physical documents in front of witnesses." Daniel leaned forward. "You're saying someone impersonated you?" "I'm saying someone with access to excellent forgeries and insider knowledge of my schedule went to a bank and pretended to be me. That's not something Grace could do alone. She doesn't look enough like me. But someone with the right makeup, the right coaching, the right support could pull it off." Daniel was already pulling up files on his laptop. "The trust was established at Manhattan Private Bank. They have security footage. If we can get access, we'd see who really set it up. And if it's not me, if it's someone Patterson or Vance sent, that's physical evidence. That's something that can't be explained away." They looked at each other, hope and determination mixing in equal measure. "I can't get that footage legally," Daniel said. "I'm not officially on this case anymore, and any request I make will raise red flags. But I can." Evelyn pulled out her phone. Manhattan Private Bank handles several of my company's accounts. I have relationships there, legitimate reasons to request security footage if I suspect fraud. They'll report it to the FBI as soon as you contact them. You're about to become a fugitive. Then I need to do it tonight, before the raid. Before they know I'm gone. She checked the time. It's 10:30. I'll email the bank president directly. Say I suspect identity theft. Request an emergency review of all transactions made in my name over the past 6 months. He knows me, trusts me. He'll want to help. And if he calls to verify, I'll answer. I'll be professional, concerned, exactly what he'd expect from me. Evelyn was already typing, composing the email with careful precision. The key is making him believe this is routine fraud prevention, not a desperate attempt to clear my name. She hit send and sat back, heart pounding. They were past the point of no return now. Everything depended on the next few hours, the next few choices. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went pale. What? Evelyn demanded. Patterson just moved up the timeline. The raid's happening at midnight, 3 hours from now. He looked at her with dawning horror. He knows. Someone tipped him off that you're not at home. That's impossible. We were careful. Not careful enough. Daniel was already moving, grabbing his keys, his gun from the lockbox he'd hidden in the cabin. We need to go, now. If he's moved up the raid, it means he's suspicious. It means he might already be tracking us. The girls, stay here with them. I'll lead them away. Make them think you went somewhere else. I'll buy you time. Daniel, no. If they catch me, I'm a federal agent who's been working deep cover. I have explanations, legal protection. You don't. He cupped her face in his hands, intense and urgent. Listen to me. Stay here. Keep the girls safe. Wait for my call. If I'm not back by morning, take Emma and Sophie and run. Kate has a contingency plan. There's an envelope in the bedroom with cash, IDs, instructions. Use them. This is insane. We should stay together. We can't. If Patterson's tracking us, he's tracking my phone, my car, maybe even me physically. I need to lead them away from you and the girls. It's the only way. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, quick and fierce. Trust me. One more time. Please. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, wanted to make him stay, but she looked at his face and saw the same determination she felt whenever she thought about protecting Emma. He was right. Separating was their best chance. Be careful, she whispered. Come back alive or Emma and Sophie will never forgive you. Neither will you, I hope. He managed to smile, then he was gone. The sound of his car engine fading into the night. Evelyn stood in the silent cabin, listening to the creak of old wood, the whisper of wind through trees. Upstairs, the girls slept peacefully, unaware that everything was falling apart. She checked her phone obsessively. No response yet from the bank president. No call from Daniel. Just silence and waiting and the terrible knowledge that forces beyond her control were closing in. At 11:47, her phone finally rang. Unknown number. Ms. Cross? The voice was cultured, familiar. Marcus Vance. I hope I'm not disturbing you too late. Ice flooded her veins. How did you get this number? I have access to many things, including, I'm sad to say, the current location of federal agent Daniel Reed. He's currently on Route 87, heading north, about 40 minutes from a very interesting cabin in the woods. I don't know what you're talking about. Please, let's not insult each other's intelligence. You ran. Very smart, actually. I almost admire it. But you made one critical mistake. What's that? You trusted the wrong person. Daniel Reed isn't trying to help you, Ms. Cross. He's trying to save his career, and right now, bringing you in is his best chance at redemption. You're lying. Am I? Then why did he leave you and the children alone in a remote cabin while he leads the FBI away? Very noble, or very convenient, depending on your perspective. Evelyn's mind raced. Could it be true? Could Daniel have been playing her this entire time, setting her up for an even bigger fall? No. She'd seen his face when he talked about Sophie. She'd heard the raw honesty in his voice. Whatever else he'd lied about, his love for his daughter was real. And people who loved their children that fiercely didn't use other people's children as pawns. Nice try, Vance. But I know who the real traitor is. Tom Patterson works for you. Richard Hendricks works for you. Grace Chen works for you. And I'm going to prove it. Even if you could prove it, which you can't, it wouldn't matter. By morning, you'll be in federal custody. Your daughter will be in protective services. Your company will be dismantled. Everything you built, everything you fought for, gone. His voice turned cold. Just like your father. I'm nothing like my father. Keep telling yourself that. But you're wrong, Ms. Cross. You're exactly like him. Robert built an empire on lies and corruption, then convinced himself he was legitimate. You've done the same thing. The only difference is that he accepted what he was. You're still in denial. My father was a criminal. I rebuilt everything legally, ethically. Spare me the self-righteousness. You think you're better than him because you followed the rules? You're not better. You're just more careful, but careful only takes you so far. Eventually, everyone's secrets come out. Evelyn's hand tightened on the phone. What do you want, Vance? I want you to understand something. This was never just about your company. It was never just about money or revenge. It was about proving that Robert Cross's daughter is no different than Robert Cross. That blood tells. That corruption breeds corruption, no matter how much you dress it up in expensive suits and charitable foundations. You're wrong. Am I? Then explain the $50 million in your daughter's name. Explain the offshore transfers. Explain why you're currently hiding from federal agents in a cabin owned by your CFO's sister. If you're so innocent, why are you running? Because people like you make justice impossible. Because you've rigged the system against me from the beginning. Because sometimes survival means doing things that look guilty even when they're not. Vance laughed, cold and sharp. Spoken like your father. He said almost exactly that at his trial, right before they sentenced him to 15 years. The call ended. Evelyn stood frozen, Vance's words echoing in her mind. Was she like her father? Had she been lying to herself about who she really was, what she'd really built? No. She refused to believe it. Her father had hurt people, stolen from them, destroyed lives for profit. She'd spent 12 years undoing that damage, rebuilding on a foundation of integrity. They were nothing alike. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from the bank president. She opened it with shaking hands. Ms. Cross, I've reviewed the security footage you requested. I'm very concerned about what I found. The woman who established the trust in your name is not you. The resemblance is remarkable, but there are clear discrepancies. I've frozen the account and reported this to our fraud department. You should contact your attorney immediately. Given the amount involved, law enforcement will need to be notified. Attached was a video file. Evelyn downloaded it, her heart pounding, and pressed play. The footage showed a woman entering the bank 6 months ago. She was approximately Evelyn's height and build, with similar dark hair and professional clothing. But the face, while close, wasn't quite right. The nose was slightly different, the jaw a shade too angular. With the right makeup and confidence, she could pass for Evelyn at a casual glance, but not under scrutiny. The woman presented identification, signed documents, smiled at the bank employee processing her request. She was professional, calm, completely confident, and she was definitely not Evelyn Cross. Evelyn paused the video, zooming in on the woman's face. There was something familiar about her, something she couldn't quite place. She forwarded the file to Daniel with a message. Got the footage. The woman isn't me. Do you recognize her? No response. She checked the time. 12:23 a.m. The raid had happened. Was Daniel okay? Had he managed to lead them away? Or had they caught him? Upstairs, a floorboard creaked, then another. Someone was walking around up there, but it wasn't the soft pad of children's feet. It was heavier. Adult. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. Someone was in the cabin. Someone had found them. She moved silently to the stairs, every sense on high alert. The door to the girls' room was open, light spilling out into the hallway. She heard Sophie's voice, confused and frightened. Where's my daddy? You said he sent you... Your daddy's fine, sweetheart, but we need to go on a little trip. You and Emma both. It'll be fun, like a game. Grace. Grace was upstairs with the children. Evelyn's mind worked frantically. How had Grace found them? How had she gotten here so fast? Unless Vance had been tracking them all along. Unless Grace had been sent here before the midnight raid, insurance in case Evelyn managed to slip away. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, keeping her voice to a whisper. There's an intruder in my home, armed and dangerous. 2 children in immediate danger. She gave the cabin's address, which she'd memorized earlier. Please hurry. The operator started asking questions, but Evelyn ended the call. She didn't have time for questions. She had to get to Emma and Sophie before Grace could take them. She crept up the stairs, phone clutched in one hand, looking for anything she could use as a weapon. At the top, she could see into the girls' room. Grace stood between the 2 beds, her smile bright and false. She held a gun in her right hand, pointed casually at the floor. Emma, Sophie, we're going to play a special game. Get dressed quickly and quietly, and then we're going to take a ride. Won't that be exciting? I want my mommy, Emma said, her voice small and terrified. Your mommy's waiting for you. That's where we're going. You're lying, Sophie said, and Evelyn felt fierce pride at the girl's courage. My daddy says that people who smile too much are usually lying. You smile too much. Grace's expression hardened. Get dressed, now, or I'll make you, and you won't like that. Evelyn stepped into the doorway. Get away from my daughter. Grace spun, raising the gun. For a moment they stood frozen, mother and traitor, with 2 terrified children between them. Miss Cross, you really should have stayed in the city. This would have been so much cleaner. Let the girls go, Grace. They have nothing to do with this. Actually, they have everything to do with this. Emma's the one with $50 million in her trust fund. Sophie's the daughter of a federal agent. Together, they make perfect leverage. Grace's smile returned, cold and sharp. Mr. Vance has plans for them. Insurance, he calls it, to make sure you and Agent Reed cooperate. Vance will never let you keep that money. He'll use you and discard you the same way he does everyone. Maybe, but I'll be rich when he discards me. That's more than I can say for you. Grace gestured with the gun. Girls, come here. Now. Emma and Sophie clung to each other, neither moving. Emma's eyes found Evelyn's, wide and frightened but also trusting. Believing her mother would fix this, would save them, would make everything okay. Evelyn had seconds to make a choice. Rush Grace and risk getting shot. Wait for the police and risk Grace taking the children. Try to negotiate and risk that Vance had backup coming. She chose option 4. You want to know where the real money is? Evelyn said. The offshore accounts Vance has been looking for? The ones my father set up before he died? Grace's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Am I? Why do you think I rebuilt the company so fast? I didn't start from nothing. I started with $200 million in untraceable funds that my father hid from the feds. Money that only I know how to access. It was a complete lie. Her father had died with nothing but debts and legal fees, but Grace didn't know that. Grace only knew that Robert Cross had been suspected of hiding assets that were never recovered. If you had that kind of money, you'd have used it already, Grace said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. Why would I? I built a legitimate empire. I didn't need dirty money, but now? Evelyn gestured around the cabin. Now I'm desperate. Now I need to disappear, and that takes resources. So yes, Grace, I have access to $200 million. Question is, would you rather have your $50 million from Vance or my $200 million? She could see Grace calculating, weighing the offer. The gun lowered slightly. How do I know you're telling the truth? You don't. But you know Vance will betray you eventually. He betrayed my father. He's betraying me. He'll betray you. That's what he does. But I have no loyalty to him. I have no reason to protect money my father stole. Help me get my daughter to safety, and I'll give you the account information. $200 million, split however you want. Emma made a small sound of protest, understanding enough to know her mother was offering something terrible. Evelyn caught her eye, gave the smallest shake of her head. Trust me, baby. Just trust me. Grace lowered the gun completely. Show me proof. Show me the accounts exist. They're on my phone, encrypted files. Let the girls go, and I'll transfer everything to you right here, right now. The girls come with us. Insurance. The girls stay here. That's non-negotiable. You take them, you get nothing. They faced off, 2 women on opposite sides of a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Grace wanted to believe her. Evelyn could see it in her eyes. The temptation of more money, the dream of real wealth instead of just Vance's scraps. All right, Grace said finally. Show me the files, but if you're lying, I'm not lying about the consequences if you hurt those children. Daniel Reed is a federal agent. Do you understand what happens to people who harm agents' children? You'll spend the rest of your life in prison, and not the comfortable kind. Grace flinched. It was enough. Evelyn pulled out her phone, keeping her movements slow and visible. She pulled up a screen full of random encrypted files, numbers, and letters that looked official enough. Here. Accounts in the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Switzerland. 237 million to be exact. My father was very thorough. Grace stepped closer, reaching for the phone. Her gun hand drifted to the side, no longer pointed at anything. Evelyn threw the phone at her face. Grace stumbled back, surprised, and Evelyn lunged. She wasn't a fighter, had never thrown a punch in her life, but she was a mother protecting her child, and that made her dangerous. She grabbed for the gun, got her hand around Grace's wrist, twisted hard. The gun went off. The sound was deafening in the small room. Emma and Sophie screamed. For a terrible moment, Evelyn couldn't tell if she'd been hit, if one of the girls had been hit, if Grace had been hit. Everything was chaos and noise and fear. Then she felt Grace's wrist in her hand, felt the gun's weight, felt herself falling backward with Grace on top of her. They crashed to the floor, both fighting for control of the weapon. Grace was younger, stronger, trained in combat. But Evelyn was fighting for her daughter's life, and that gave her a strength she didn't know she possessed. They rolled, crashed into furniture, knocked over a lamp. The gun was between them, both hands wrapped around it, fingers searching for the trigger. Grace's knee drove into Evelyn's stomach, knocking the air from her lungs. Black spots danced across her vision. Then another gunshot, impossibly loud. Grace went limp. Evelyn pushed her off, gasping, and saw blood spreading across Grace's shoulder. She'd been hit, but not fatally. The wound was high, probably missed anything vital, but the fight was over. Emma and Sophie were huddled together in the corner, crying and terrified. Evelyn crawled to them, gathering both girls into her arms, checking them frantically for injuries. They were okay. Scared, but okay. "It's all right," she whispered over and over. "You're safe. I've got you. You're safe." Grace groaned on the floor, conscious but immobilized by pain and shock. Evelyn grabbed the gun, checked the safety, kept it pointed away from the children. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The 911 call she'd made. Police were coming. But were they coming to help her or to arrest her? Her phone buzzed. Daniel, finally. "Evelyn, are you—" Grace was here. She tried to take the girls. "There was a fight. She's been shot. Police are coming." Words tumbled out in a rush. "Daniel, I don't know if they're coming to help or to arrest me. I'm 10 minutes away. Don't let them take you into custody. You understand? Do not get in a police car. Wait for me." "How did you—" "Patterson wasn't tracking me. He was tracking my phone. I left it in my car and doubled back on foot. I've been watching the cabin from the woods. I saw Grace arrive, but I couldn't get there fast enough." His voice cracked. "Is Sophie okay? Is she hurt?" Evelyn looked at his daughter, pressed against her side, shaking but unhurt. "She's fine, scared but fine. Emma too." "Emma, thank God." "Okay, listen. When the police arrive, tell them exactly what happened. Self-defense, defense of your children. Don't mention the FBI investigation. Don't mention Vance. Just a home invasion, a woman with a gun. You fought back. Can you do that?" "Yes." "I'm almost there. Hold on, Evelyn. Just hold on." The sirens were right outside now, lights flashing through the windows. Car doors slammed, voices shouted commands. Evelyn set the gun on the floor, far from Grace, and raised her hands where they'd be visible. "Stay behind me, girls," she said quietly. "And whatever happens, remember that I love you both." The door burst open. Police officers flooded in, weapons drawn, barking orders. Evelyn kept her hands raised, kept her voice calm. "My name is Evelyn Cross. That woman on the floor broke into this cabin and tried to kidnap these children. She fired first. I defended myself and the girls. The weapon is on the floor. I am not armed." They approached cautiously, separated her from the children with gentle hands, checked Grace's pulse. Someone called for an ambulance. Someone else started asking questions, taking her statement, documenting the scene. Through it all, Evelyn kept her eyes on Emma and Sophie, making sure they were okay, making sure no one hurt them or scared them any more than they already were. Then Daniel was there, moving through the chaos with his badge raised, identifying himself as federal law enforcement. He went straight to Sophie, gathering her into his arms, and Evelyn saw the raw relief on his face. His daughter was safe. That was all that mattered to him in that moment. He met Evelyn's eyes over Sophie's head, and something passed between them. Understanding, gratitude, partnership forged in fire and fear, and the desperate need to protect their children. They'd survived the night, barely. But the war wasn't over, not even close. Because somewhere in the city, Marcus Vance had just learned that his plan had failed, that Evelyn Cross and Daniel Reed were still free, still fighting, still dangerous. And now they had proof. They had Grace, wounded and in custody, with no loyalty left to protect her employers. They had the bank's security footage showing someone else establishing the fraudulent trust. They had Daniel's recordings, which might not be admissible, but could point investigators in the right direction. They had everything they needed to start building a real case. But they also had something more important. They had two little girls who'd looked death in the face and survived because their parents had refused to give up. Two little girls who trusted their parents to save them and who hadn't been disappointed. As dawn broke over the cabin, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Evelyn held her daughter close and watched Daniel hold his daughter, and felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. They were going to win this, together, whatever it took. The ambulance pulled away with Grace inside, police lights still strobing against the trees. Emma and Sophie had finally fallen asleep on the couch, wrapped in blankets and exhausted from tears, their hands still clasped together, even in sleep. Evelyn sat on the porch steps watching the sun rise fully, Daniel beside her with his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and urgent as he coordinated with someone at the bureau. "I don't care what Patterson told you," Daniel was saying. "I have a wounded suspect in custody who broke into a private residence and attempted to kidnap 2 children at gunpoint. Grace Chen." "Yes, the same Grace Chen who works as Evelyn Cross's assistant. And I have reason to believe she was acting on orders from Marcus Vance and with the knowledge of Special Agent Tom Patterson." A pause. Evelyn could hear angry voices on the other end, though she couldn't make out the words. "Then bring in internal affairs. Bring in whoever you need to bring in. But I'm telling you right now, if you try to arrest Evelyn Cross based on Patterson's warrant, you're going to destroy the FBI's credibility when the truth comes out." Daniel's jaw tightened. "She just saved 2 children's lives, including my daughter. She acted in self-defense against an armed intruder, and I have evidence that the entire case against her was fabricated by people on our payroll." More shouting from the phone. Daniel pulled it away from his ear, took a breath, then spoke with forced calm. "Assistant Director Morrison, I need you to listen very carefully. I'm sending you 3 files right now. The first is security footage from Manhattan Private Bank showing someone other than Evelyn Cross establishing the fraudulent trust fund. The second is a recording of a meeting between Marcus Vance, Richard Hendricks, and Tom Patterson discussing their plan to frame Ms. Cross. The third is Grace Chen's phone records showing dozens of calls to a law firm owned by Vance's brother. He waited, and Evelyn watched the tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand clenched and unclenched against his thigh. "I obtained the recording while off-duty and acting on personal suspicion. It's not admissible, but it gives you probable cause to investigate Patterson. The bank footage was provided to Ms. Cross by the bank president after she reported suspected identity theft. The phone records I pulled using my legitimate access as the investigating agent." Daniel stood, pacing across the porch. "Ma'am, I understand the position this puts you in, but right now you have a choice. You can either arrest an innocent woman and let actual criminals walk free, or you can do the job we swore to do and follow the evidence wherever it leads." A long silence. Then Daniel's shoulders dropped slightly, relief washing over his face. "Thank you, ma'am." "Yes, we'll be here." "And ma'am?" "You should know that Patterson moved up the original raid timeline. He knew Ms. Cross had left the city before he should have had any way to know that. Someone tipped him off. Which means either there's another leak in the Bureau or Patterson has access to surveillance we don't know about." He ended the call and sat heavily beside Evelyn, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Well?" she asked. "Assistant Director Morrison is the best kind of bureaucrat. She cares more about the truth than politics. She's putting Patterson on administrative leave effective immediately and opening a full investigation into his conduct. She's also freezing the warrant for your arrest until she can review all the evidence personally. So I'm not going to be arrested? Not today. Maybe not ever if we can prove what we know. He looked at her. But Evelyn, this is far from over. Morrison will be thorough, which means she'll investigate you too. Everything in your company, your finances, your history. If there's anything questionable anywhere, she'll find it. There isn't. I've spent 12 years making sure of that. I believe you, but you need to prepare yourself for the scrutiny. They'll go through everything with a microscope. Your employees will be interviewed, your board members questioned, your daughter's school records reviewed. It's going to be invasive and exhausting and probably terrifying. Evelyn thought about Emma sleeping inside, about how close they'd come to losing everything. I can handle invasive and exhausting. As long as Emma's safe, I can handle anything. She will be, I promise you that. Daniel's hand found hers between them. Morrison's sending agents to arrest Hendricks this morning. Grace is in surgery, but should be able to give a statement by this afternoon. If she cooperates, if she gives us everything on Vance and Patterson, this could move fast. You think she'll cooperate? I think she's terrified and in pain and just realized that the people she was working for sent her on a suicide mission. Vance had to know there was a chance you'd fight back, that things could go wrong. He sent her anyway. That kind of betrayal tends to make people very talkative. A car came up the dirt road, sleek and black and official. FBI, Evelyn knew without asking. Daniel stood, positioning himself slightly in front of her, protective even though these were supposed to be his colleagues. Two agents emerged, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, and a younger man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The woman approached with her credentials already out. Assistant Director Janet Morrison, you must be Ms. Cross. She extended her hand and Evelyn shook it, noting the firm grip and direct gaze. I apologize for the circumstances. Agent Reed has brought some very serious allegations to my attention. He's told you the truth. Everything he said is verifiable. I intend to verify all of it, which is why I need you to come with me to our field office, voluntarily, for questioning. You're not under arrest, but I need your full cooperation. Evelyn looked at Daniel, who nodded slightly. This was the price of clearing her name, full transparency, total cooperation, trusting that the truth would be enough. My daughter can stay here with Agent Reed and his daughter. My partner will remain with them to ensure their safety. You have my word that no harm will come to the children. It wasn't ideal. It meant leaving Emma again, meant more fear and uncertainty, but it was also necessary. Morrison was offering her a chance to fight back legitimately, within the system. She had to take it. All right, but I want regular updates. Every hour someone calls and lets me speak to Emma. Agreed. Morrison gestured toward the car. Shall we? Evelyn went inside first, kneeling beside the couch where Emma slept. She brushed hair from her daughter's face, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the flutter of her eyelashes. Mommy? Emma stirred, her eyes opening. Where are you going? I have to go help some people understand what happened last night. Mr. Reed is going to stay with you and Sophie. You remember Mr. Reed? Sophie's daddy. Emma sat up, suddenly more awake. Are we in trouble? No, baby. You're not in trouble. You were so brave last night. I'm so proud of you. Evelyn pulled her daughter close. I need you to be brave a little while longer. Can you do that for me? Emma nodded against her shoulder. Will you come back? I promise. Before dinner, and then we're going to fix everything, and things will go back to normal. I don't want normal. I like it better with Sophie here. Emma pulled back to look at her. Can we keep her? Despite everything, Evelyn laughed. We'll have to ask her daddy about that. But we'll figure something out, okay? She kissed Emma's forehead and stood, meeting Daniel's eyes across the room. He had Sophie in his arms now, the little girl clinging to him like a lifeline. They looked at each other, these two parents who'd been thrown together by circumstance and had somehow become partners, maybe even friends, definitely something more complicated than either. Keep them safe, Evelyn said quietly. With my life, Daniel replied. And Evelyn? Morrison's tough, but she's fair. Tell her everything. Don't hold back. It's the only way through this. She nodded and followed Morrison out to the car, leaving behind the two people who mattered most and trusting a man she'd known for less than a week to protect them. It should have felt insane. Instead, it felt right. The drive to the FBI field office took 2 hours, long enough for Evelyn to prepare herself mentally for what was coming. Morrison didn't speak much, occasionally taking calls and issuing terse instructions. When they finally pulled into an underground garage, Evelyn felt a flutter of panic. She was voluntarily walking into a federal building, about to submit to interrogation by people who'd spent months building a case against her, but she'd spent 12 years building her innocence. That had to count for something. The interrogation room was exactly what she expected. Gray walls, metal table, uncomfortable chairs, one-way mirror. Morrison sat across from her, a recorder between them, and began methodically working through every detail of the past 4 years. Grace's hiring. Evelyn explained the interview process, the reference checks, how everything had seemed legitimate. She provided dates, names, documentation of exactly how Grace had been vetted. The board members. Evelyn walked Morrison through, when Hendricks joined, how he'd been recommended by people she trusted, how he'd seemed committed to the company's mission. She admitted she'd been naive, too willing to believe in people's good intentions. The offshore accounts. Evelyn explained her company's international expansion, the legitimate business reasons for the accounts, how all of them had been properly reported and taxed. She provided access to everything, holding nothing back. The $50 million trust. Evelyn showed the bank's security footage on her phone, pointed out the differences between herself and the imposter. She explained how she'd discovered the trust's existence, how she'd immediately reported it as fraud. Hours passed. Coffee appeared, went cold, was replaced. Morrison's questions were relentless but not hostile. She was testing Evelyn's story, looking for holes, searching for the lie that would unravel everything. But there was no lie to find. Finally, Morrison sat back and studied Evelyn with a different kind of intensity. "Ms. Cross, I'm going to be direct with you. My initial review of the evidence suggests that Agent Patterson acted improperly. The timeline of his investigation, the way he pursued certain leads while ignoring others, his relationship with Richard Hendricks, all of it raises serious questions. He was working for Vance. So it appears, but proving it will require more than recordings that aren't admissible in court. We need testimony from Grace Chen. We need Hendricks to flip. We need documentary evidence that can survive legal scrutiny." Morrison leaned forward. "Which brings me to something I need from you. Access to your company's internal files, everything. If Patterson planted evidence, if Vance's people manipulated your records, I need to find it. You'll have complete access, whatever you need. This will destroy your privacy. Your employees will know the FBI is investigating the company. Your stock price will tank. You may lose clients, contracts, board members. Are you prepared for that?" Evelyn thought about her father, about how he'd fought the investigation, hidden evidence, lied to protect himself. It had destroyed him anyway, but it had also destroyed innocent people who'd trusted him. "I rebuilt this company to be different from what my father created. That means being transparent, even when transparency hurts, especially when it hurts." She met Morrison's gaze steadily. "Do whatever you need to do. I'm not hiding anything." Morrison's expression shifted, something that might have been respect crossing her features. "All right, I'll have a team at your office by end of business today. In the meantime, I need you to stay available. Don't leave the state, keep your phone on, respond immediately if we need you." "What about my daughter? Can I take her home?" "To your Brooklyn residence? Yes, but Ms. Cross, you should know that Marcus Vance is aware his plan failed. Grace's arrest will be public knowledge soon. He's going to know you're cooperating with us. That makes you a threat to him. You think he'll come after me directly?" "I think he's desperate, and desperate people do unpredictable things. I'm assigning protective custody. Agents will be stationed outside your home, monitoring your movements, keeping you safe until we have Vance in custody." It meant more invasion of privacy, more scrutiny, more disruption to Emma's life. But it also meant safety, protection, the knowledge that the full weight of federal law enforcement stood between her daughter and the people who wanted to hurt them. "Thank you," Evelyn said quietly. Morrison stood, signaling the interview was over. "Agent Reed speaks highly of you. That carries weight with me. He's one of the best investigators I've ever worked with, and he doesn't trust easily. If he believes in your innocence, I'm inclined to give you the benefit of the doubt." She paused at the door. "But, Ms. Cross, if I find out you've lied to me, if there's any truth to the allegations against you, I will personally ensure you face the maximum penalties. Do we understand each other?" "Completely." "Good. Someone will drive you back to your daughter." The return trip was faster, adrenaline and exhaustion making the hours blur together. By the time they reached the cabin, it was late afternoon, the sun beginning its descent toward the horizon. Emma and Sophie were in the front yard with Daniel, building some elaborate structure out of sticks and leaves, while the FBI agent assigned to protect them watched from the porch. Emma saw her first and came running, crashing into Evelyn's arms with enough force to knock her back a step. Evelyn held her daughter tight, breathing in the scent of sunshine and dirt and childhood, feeling the fear of the past hours finally start to release its grip. "You came back," Emma said, her voice muffled against Evelyn's shoulder. "I promised I would. I always keep my promises to you." Sophie had joined them, and Daniel, and suddenly they were a tangle of arms and relief and the knowledge that they'd survived another day. The FBI agent was talking on his phone, coordinating something, but Evelyn didn't care. All that mattered was this moment, these people, this fragile sense of safety. "Morrison came through," Daniel said quietly. "Patterson's been arrested. Hendricks too. And Grace is talking. She's giving them everything in exchange for a plea deal." "What about Vance?" "Agents are executing a search warrant at his office right now. Morrison wants to build an airtight case before she arrests him. Make sure he can't slip away on some technicality." Evelyn pulled back to look at him. "It's really happening. We're really going to win this." "Looks like it." Daniel smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger and lighter and free of the burden he'd been carrying. "Morrison also told me I'm being reassigned. Can't investigate a case I'm personally involved in. But she said something interesting. She said maybe being personally involved was the only reason the truth came out." "What will you do now?" "Take some time off, spend it with Sophie, figure out what comes next." He looked at her, and something in his expression made her heart beat faster. "Maybe have some conversations I've been putting off." Before Evelyn could respond, Emma tugged on her hand. "Mommy, Sophie and me have been talking. We have a question." "What is it, baby?" "Can we be sisters, like, officially? Sophie says that would make Mr. Reed her daddy and your daddy, which doesn't make sense because you're a grown-up. But I said maybe it means something else. Does it?" Out of the mouths of children. Evelyn looked at Daniel, saw him trying not to laugh, saw the same question in his eyes that was probably in hers. When had this become about more than just survival? When had protecting their daughters turned into something that looked suspiciously like a family? "That's a very complicated question," Evelyn said carefully. "Being sisters usually means having the same parents, and you and Sophie have different parents." "But you could get married," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "Then we'd have the same parents. That's what my friend Jessica's mom did. She married someone, and now Jessica has a new daddy and a new sister." "Marriage is something grown-ups decide after they know each other for a long time," Daniel said. "Your mom and I have only known each other for a little while." "But you like each other, right?" Emma pressed. "I can tell. You do that thing where you look at each other when you think we're not watching." Evelyn felt heat rise to her cheeks. Apparently they'd been less subtle than she'd thought. "Tell you what," Daniel said. "How about we focus on making sure everyone's safe first, and then we can talk about complicated questions like sisters and marriage and all of that. Deal?" The girls agreed, though they exchanged a look that suggested they were already planning their next campaign. They ran off to resume their stick construction, leaving the adults alone. "Well," Evelyn said, "that was mortifying." "And accurate," Daniel added. "We do look at each other when we think they're not watching." "We've been a little busy to worry about subtlety." "True. But Evelyn, when this is over, when Vance is in custody and the investigation is complete and our lives aren't in constant danger, I'd like to have that conversation. The one about what comes next for us." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Because somewhere between investigating you and fighting beside you, I stopped being able to imagine my life without you in it, and I think maybe you feel the same way." She did. It was terrifying and complicated, and probably a terrible idea to get involved with someone she'd met under such extraordinary circumstances. But it was also true. Undeniably, impossibly true. I feel the same way, she admitted. But Daniel, we need to be smart about this. For Emma and Sophie's sake. They've already been through so much. If we start something and it doesn't work, then we make sure it works. We take our time. We do it right. We put the girls first always. But we try, he smiled. We've faced down armed criminals and corrupt federal agents. I think we can handle dating. Dating? The word sounded strange and normal and wonderful. I haven't dated anyone since before Emma was born. I haven't dated anyone since my wife left. We're both terrible at this. It'll be perfect. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. You have a very strange definition of perfect. Says the woman who took down a corporate conspiracy while raising an 8-year-old alone. I think our definitions of perfect might actually align pretty well. The FBI agent approached, clearing his throat apologetically. Ms. Cross, Agent Reed, we need to head back to the city. Morrison wants everyone in secure locations before nightfall. Reality crashed back in. They weren't safe yet. Vance was still free, still dangerous, still capable of making one last desperate move. The fight wasn't over, but it was close. So close. The drive back to Brooklyn happened in convoy, 2 FBI vehicles surrounding Daniel's car. Emma and Sophie were quiet in the back seat, exhausted from their adventure, holding hands and half asleep. Evelyn watched the city approach, watched the familiar skyline take shape against the evening sky, and felt something shift inside her. She was going home. Not as a fugitive, not as a suspect, but as someone who'd fought for her innocence and won, as someone who'd protected her daughter and helped protect someone else's daughter, as someone who'd discovered that she didn't have to fight every battle alone. Her phone buzzed. A text from Morrison. Vance just lawyered up. Search turned up financial records linking him to the fraudulent trust and the offshore accounts. Grace confirmed he orchestrated everything. We're making the arrest tonight. Evelyn showed the message to Daniel, watched relief and satisfaction cross his face. It was done. After years of Vance working in shadows, manipulating, and destroying, he was finally going to face justice. What happens to the company? Daniel asked. With Hendricks arrested and Grace gone, you'll need to rebuild your entire management structure. I know, it'll take time, but I'd rather rebuild with people I can trust than keep people who've been lying to me. She paused. I'm going to need a new CFO. I hear there's an unemployed federal agent with extensive financial crimes experience looking for work. Bit of a conflict of interest, isn't it? The CFO dating the CEO? We could disclose it to the board, make it transparent, or I could consult instead of joining full-time. There are ways to make it work if we want to. If we want to. The assumption that this was a partnership now, that decisions would be made together, should have terrified her. Instead, it felt right. They pulled up to her brownstone just as the sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. FBI agents took up positions on the street, a visible deterrent to anyone who might be watching. Inside, everything looked exactly as she'd left it, frozen in the moment before her world had turned upside down. Emma went straight to her room, Sophie trailing behind her, both girls moving with the easy confidence of children who'd faced danger and survived. They'd need therapy, Evelyn knew, help processing what they'd been through, but they'd also gained something precious. The knowledge that their parents would protect them, that they weren't alone, that fear could be faced and overcome. Daniel helped her check the apartment, making sure everything was secure. It was domestic and comfortable and strange, this man moving through her space as if he belonged there. And maybe he did. Maybe that's what happened when you fought beside someone, trusted them with everything that mattered. They became part of your life in ways you couldn't undo even if you wanted to. Her phone rang. Morrison. We have him. Vance is in custody. His attorney's already making noise about false arrest and harassment, but we have enough evidence to hold him. Between Grace's testimony, the bank records, and the documents we found in his office, we can prove conspiracy, fraud, identity theft, and attempted kidnapping. What about Patterson? Facing charges for corruption, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. He'll likely spend the next 20 years in prison. Hendricks is cooperating in exchange for a reduced sentence. The whole house of cards is falling, Ms. Cross. And you're cleared, completely. I'm lifting all restrictions on your movement as of now. Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her. Cleared. Free. Innocent in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of everyone who mattered. Thank you, she whispered, for believing us, for investigating. Thank Agent Reed. He risked his career to get me the truth. Most agents wouldn't have done that. Morrison paused. Ms. Cross, you rebuilt your father's company into something legitimate and honorable. You should be proud of that. And you should know that the Bureau is issuing a formal apology for the harassment you've endured. It won't undo the damage, but it's something. After the call ended, Evelyn stood in her living room and let herself feel it. The relief. The exhaustion. The bone-deep satisfaction of having fought impossible odds and won. She'd protected Emma, cleared her name, taken down the people who'd tried to destroy her. She'd survived. More than that, she'd found something she didn't know she'd been missing. Partnership, trust, the possibility of something more. Daniel found her there, standing in the fading light, and wrapped his arms around her from behind. She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart against her back. It's over, he said quietly. It's over, she agreed. What now? She turned in his arms to face him. Now we figure out what normal looks like. Now we help our daughters process what happened. Now we rebuild. The company, our lives, everything that got damaged. She smiled. And maybe, if we're very lucky, we figure out what this is between us. I can tell you what it is. Daniel's hand came up to cup her face. It's two people who found each other in the worst possible circumstances and discovered they work better together than apart. It's terrifying and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. You make it sound simple. The best things usually are, underneath all the complications. He kissed her forehead, gentle and sweet. But we have time now. Time to do this right. Time to let the girls adjust. Time to just breathe. Time. Such a precious thing. For years, Evelyn had been racing against time, fighting to prove herself before the past caught up with her. Now, suddenly, she had all the time in the world. From upstairs, she heard Emma's laughter, Sophie's answering giggle. The sound of children who'd been scared and were now safe, who'd been separated and were now together, who'd survived darkness and found light on the other side. That's what mattered. Not the empire, not the investigation, not even the victory over Vance. What mattered was the sound of her daughter laughing. The feel of Daniel's arms around her. The knowledge that tomorrow would come and they'd face it together. The war was over. The empire had collapsed, not hers, but the one Vance had built on lies and corruption and revenge. Justice had been served. The guilty would be punished. The innocent were free. And in a brownstone in Brooklyn, two families that had been broken were beginning to heal. Together. It wasn't a perfect ending. There would still be challenges ahead, difficult conversations, decisions to make about the future, but it was honest, real, built on truth instead of deception. And that, Evelyn thought as she held on to Daniel and listened to their daughters play upstairs, was the best kind of ending. The kind that was really just a beginning. 6 months later, Evelyn stood in front of a building that didn't exist in her plans a year ago. It was smaller than her corporate headquarters, tucked into a quiet street in the West Village, with large windows that let in afternoon light and a sign that read Cross Foundation for Corporate Accountability in simple, elegant letters. Not an empire. Something better. Daniel leaned against his car across the street, watching her with that slight smile she'd come to know well. He'd traded his federal agent credentials for a consultant's business card 2 months ago, working with companies to strengthen their financial oversight and prevent the kind of corruption that had nearly destroyed her. He was good at it, better than good. He'd found purpose in helping others avoid what she'd endured. "You're stalling," he called out. "The ribbon-cutting ceremony starts in 20 minutes, and you're the guest of honor." "I'm not stalling. I'm appreciating the moment." "You're definitely stalling." He crossed the street to join her. "Having second thoughts?" "No, just first thoughts. Lots of them." She gestured at the building. "A year ago, I was running a billion-dollar corporation. Now I'm running a nonprofit that operates on grants and donations. My accountant thinks I've lost my mind. Your accountant doesn't understand that some things matter more than profit margins. Do you think we're doing the right thing? The foundation, I mean, not just for us, but for the companies we're trying to help? Daniel took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture that had become natural over the months. I think you spent 12 years proving you weren't your father. Now you're spending the rest of your life making sure other people don't have to fight that same battle. Yeah, I think we're doing the right thing. We. 6 months ago, that word would have felt presumptuous. Now it felt like the truest thing in her vocabulary. The trial had been difficult but swift. Marcus Vance, faced with overwhelming evidence and Grace Chen's detailed testimony, had eventually accepted a plea deal. 25 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole. Richard Hendricks got 15, Tom Patterson got 30. Grace, in exchange for her cooperation, received 5 years with credit for time served and the knowledge that she'd helped bring down the people who'd used her. The company Evelyn had built had survived, but barely. The investigation had scared off investors, tanked the stock price, created chaos in the ranks. She'd spent 3 months stabilizing things, installing new management, implementing transparency measures that went beyond anything legally required. Then she'd made the hardest decision of her career. She'd sold it. Not to a competitor, but to her employees through a cooperative structure that gave them ownership and control. She'd walked away with enough money to live comfortably and fund the foundation, but nothing close to the empire she'd commanded. Some people thought she was crazy. Most of her former board members had said as much right before she'd fired them all. But Emma had understood immediately. "You don't need to be in charge of everything to be important, Mommy," her daughter had said, with the wisdom of 8-year-olds who'd survived kidnapping attempts. "You just need to help people. That's what makes you you." Movement at the foundation's entrance caught her eye. Emma and Sophie emerged, both wearing matching dresses they'd picked out together, carrying a basket of something between them. They'd become inseparable over the past 6 months, more like sisters than friends, finishing each other's sentences and conspiring in whispers that made both parents simultaneously proud and nervous. "We made cookies for the ceremony," Sophie announced, holding up the basket. "Emma's grandma's recipe. Well, sort of. We modified it because the original one had too much sugar." "Too much sugar according to who?" Evelyn asked, amused. "According to Sophie," Emma said. "She's very scientific about baking. Did you know that sugar crystals can affect the texture of cookies by up to 40%? "I did not know that." Daniel crouched down to inspect the cookies. "But I'm willing to test this hypothesis through careful consumption." "Daddy, you can't eat them yet. They're for the guests." Sophie swatted his hand away with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved beyond measure. The girls ran back inside, and Evelyn watched them go with that familiar mixture of gratitude and lingering fear that never quite went away. They'd both been in therapy, processing the trauma of that night in the cabin. Dr. Chen, no relation to Grace, as Sophie had felt compelled to clarify, said they were doing remarkably well, that their resilience was a testament to feeling safe and supported. But sometimes Evelyn still woke up in the middle of the night, her heart pounding, convinced someone was in Emma's room. Sometimes she found Daniel already awake, standing in Sophie's doorway, watching his daughter sleep with the vigilance of someone who'd almost lost everything. They were healing, but healing took time. "You're thinking about that night again," Daniel said quietly. It wasn't a question. "How can you tell?" "You get this look like you're calculating all the ways things could have gone wrong." He pulled her closer. "But they didn't go wrong, Evelyn. We won. The girls are safe. The bad guys are in prison. We're here, about to open a foundation that's going to help people. This is the victory. Let yourself feel it." She leaned into him, breathing in the scent of his cologne and coffee and the peppermints he kept in his pocket for Sophie. "I'm trying. Some days are easier than others." "I know. Same here." He kissed her temple. "But we have each other now. That helps." They did have each other. It had started carefully, almost tentatively, with coffee dates while the girls were at school and long phone calls after they'd been put to bed. Then dinners, walks in the park, stolen kisses when they thought the girls weren't watching. They'd been deliberate about it, moving slowly, making sure Emma and Sophie were comfortable with each shift in their relationship. 3 months ago, Daniel and Sophie had moved into the brownstone. Emma had been thrilled. Sophie had immediately claimed the room next to Emma's and announced that she was never leaving. Diane had returned to help manage the household chaos of suddenly having two children instead of one, and had taken to calling them her girls with proprietary affection. It wasn't perfect. They argued about parenting decisions and whose turn it was to handle school pickup and whether it was too soon to be living together. But they also laughed every day, supported each other through the hard moments, and built something that felt more solid than anything Evelyn had constructed in her corporate life. Last week, Daniel had left a ring catalog on the kitchen counter with a sticky note that said, "No pressure, just thinking ahead." Evelyn had left it there with her own note. "Let's survive the foundation launch first, then we can discuss jewelry." But she'd circled 3 designs that she liked, and Daniel had noticed, and neither of them had mentioned it since, but it sat between them like a promise waiting to be made. 5 minutes, someone called from inside the building. Janet Morrison, who'd resigned from the FBI to become the Foundation's first director. She'd spent 25 years investigating corporate crime and decided she'd rather prevent it. Evelyn had hired her immediately. The ceremony was small and meaningful, nothing like the elaborate corporate events Evelyn used to orchestrate. Local business owners, community leaders, a few reporters from trade publications. Emma and Sophie handed out cookies and charmed everyone who spoke to them. Daniel gave a brief speech about the importance of financial transparency. Morrison outlined their mission and programs. When it was Evelyn's turn to speak, she stood at the podium and looked out at the gathered faces. Some she knew, some were strangers. All of them were here because they believed in what the Foundation represented. "A year ago," she began, "I was fighting for my life and my daughter's future against people who wanted to destroy me. I was alone, terrified, and convinced that trusting anyone would be my downfall. I was wrong. Trust didn't destroy me. It saved me." She found Daniel's eyes in the crowd, saw him smile. Trust in a federal agent who risked his career to find the truth. Trust in an assistant director who chose justice over politics. Trust in my daughter who believed I'd protect her even when I wasn't sure I could. And eventually trust in myself, trust that I'd built something worth fighting for, that I was better than the legacy I'd inherited, that I deserved to be here. Emma and Sophie stood together near the front, holding hands and watching her with identical expressions of pride. Her daughters. Both of them, in every way that mattered. This foundation exists because I learned that the best way to fight corruption isn't to build a perfect empire. It's to help others build better ones. To teach transparency, accountability, and the kind of integrity that survives scrutiny. We can't prevent every bad actor, but we can make it harder for them to hide. We can support the people trying to do the right thing. We can prove that success and ethics aren't mutually exclusive. She spoke for another 10 minutes, outlining their programs and goals. When she finished, the applause was genuine and warm. People came forward to congratulate her, to share their own stories of fighting corruption, to express hope that the foundation would make a difference. An older man approached, someone Evelyn didn't recognize. He had kind eyes and weathered hands, and he introduced himself as Robert Chen. "My son worked for your father," he said quietly. "Lost his pension when the company collapsed. Lost his faith in the system. He died 5 years ago, still bitter about what happened, but I think he'd be proud to see what you've built from those ashes. You're not your father's daughter anymore. You're your own person." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know. Make sure it does some good, this foundation. Make sure people like my son don't get forgotten when the powerful play their games." "I will. I promise." After he left, she found Daniel waiting with a glass of wine and understanding in his eyes. He'd heard the exchange, knew what it meant to her. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah. Actually, I really am." She took the wine, sipped it, let herself feel the satisfaction of this moment. "Morrison's already got 3 companies lined up for our first audit program. We're going to be busy." "Good. Busy is good. Busy means we're making a difference." He clinked his glass against hers. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," she echoed. The evening wound down slowly. Guests filtered out, staff cleaned up. Emma and Sophie convinced Daniel to judge their impromptu gymnastics routine in the foundation's main room. Evelyn watched them, her family, because that's what they were now. and felt a peace she'd never experienced in all her years of corporate success. On the drive home, the girls chattered in the back seat about their plans for summer break. They wanted to go to camp together, the kind with horseback riding and swimming and science experiments. They wanted to have sleepovers every weekend. They wanted to learn to cook real meals, not just cookies so they could make dinner for their parents. "Why do you want to make us dinner?" Daniel asked, amused. "Because you and Mom are always so busy," Emma said, as if this should be obvious. "If we can make dinner, you can have more time to do grown-up stuff." "What kind of grown-up stuff?" Evelyn asked, suspicious. Sophie and Emma exchanged a glance in the rear-view mirror that made both parents nervous. "You know," Sophie said carefully, "grown-up stuff. Like talking and hanging out and maybe discussing important things." "What important things?" Daniel pressed. "Sophia Marie Reed, are you scheming?" Emma rose cross. "Are you helping her scheme?" Evelyn added. Both girls dissolved into giggles, which was answer enough. They'd been plotting something, these two. Evelyn made a mental note to investigate later. At home, the evening routine had become comfortably familiar. Homework check, even though it was summer break and there was no homework because structure was important. Showers and pajamas. Story time in Emma's room with both girls curled up on either side of Evelyn while Daniel made popcorn in the kitchen. Then switching places while Evelyn made tea and Daniel read to them from whatever book they'd chosen that week. Tonight it was a story about a girl who discovered she had magic powers but had to learn to control them before they controlled her. Emma and Sophie hung on every word, interrupting occasionally to debate whether they'd want magic powers and what kind. "I'd want to be able to talk to animals," Sophie declared. "Then I could ask the squirrels in the park what they think about all day." "I'd want to be able to make things grow," Emma said. "Like, I could plant a seed and make it grow into a tree instantly. Then we could have a tree house." "We could have a tree house without magic," Daniel pointed out. "I know how to build things." "But magic would be faster," Emma argued. "Magic always has a price," Evelyn said from the doorway. "That's what the story's teaching us. Power without wisdom is dangerous." "Is that why you gave up your big company?" Sophie asked suddenly. "Because it was too much power?" The question caught Evelyn off guard. Sophie had asked difficult questions before, but this one cut to the heart of something Evelyn had been processing for months. "That's part of it," she said slowly, coming to sit on the edge of the bed. "The company gave me power, but it also made me a target. And I realized that having power meant people wanted to take it from me, which meant I spent all my time protecting it instead of using it to help people." "So you gave it away?" "I gave it to people who would use it better. And now I have a different kind of power, the power to teach and help and make sure other people don't make the same mistakes." Emma nodded, satisfied with this answer. "That's better. You're happier now." "I am happier now. How did you know that?" "Because you smile more, and you laugh at Daddy's jokes even when they're not funny." "Hey," Daniel protested, "my jokes are hilarious." "They're really not," Sophie said matter-of-factly, "but we laugh because we love you." The casual way she said it, "We love you," as if it was the most natural thing in the world, made Evelyn's chest tight. These girls, who'd been through so much, who'd had every reason to be cynical and guarded, had chosen love, had chosen to build a family from the wreckage of their parents' separate struggles. After the girls were finally asleep, Evelyn and Daniel retreated to the back porch with their tea and wine, sitting on the swing Daniel had installed last month. The night was warm, the neighborhood quiet except for distant traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. "They're planning something," Evelyn said. "Oh, definitely." Emma kept looking at Sophie with that "should we tell them" expression. "Should we be worried?" "Probably, but they're good kids. Whatever they're planning, it's probably more adorable than dangerous." Daniel set his wine down and turned to face her. "Speaking of planning things, we should probably talk about the elephant in the room. The Ring catalog? The Ring catalog!" Evelyn had known this conversation was coming. They'd been dancing around it for weeks, both of them aware that they'd crossed some invisible threshold from dating to building a life together. Moving in together had been one thing. Marriage was something else entirely. "I want to marry you," she said simply. "But I'm terrified." Of marriage? Of failing? Of bringing more chaos into Emma's life? Of messing this up somehow? She looked at him. My father's marriage was a disaster. I don't have a template for what a good marriage looks like. Neither do I. My wife left me and I never understood why. My parents died when I was 15. I'm working from theory here, not experience. He took her hand. But here's what I know. We work well together. We communicate. We put the girls first. We're honest with each other, even when it's hard. That's more than a lot of married couples have. It's also what we have now, without the legal complications. True. So maybe the question isn't whether we should get married, but why we want to. What would change? Evelyn thought about it. I want Emma to grow up knowing that commitment is real. That when you love someone, you choose them every day, and you make it official because it matters. I want her to see what a partnership looks like when it's built on trust and respect. I want Sophie to stop worrying that I'm going to leave like her mother did. I want her to feel secure, to know that this family is permanent. Marriage is a symbol of that permanence. So we're doing this for the girls? We're doing this for us too. Daniel's thumb traced circles on her palm. I want to call you my wife. I want you to have the legal right to make medical decisions for Sophie if something happens to me. I want to build a life with you that's recognized by the law and the world, not just in our hearts. When you put it that way, it sounds reasonable. It is reasonable. We're reasonable people who've survived unreasonable circumstances. Getting married is probably the sanest thing we could do. Evelyn laughed. That's the least romantic proposal I've ever heard. Good thing I wasn't proposing then. When I propose, it'll be romantic and thoughtful and probably make you cry. This is just us talking about the future like the mature adults we pretend to be. Oh, so there's going to be an actual proposal? Obviously, I bought a ring 3 weeks ago. It's hidden in my sock drawer, which is apparently the least original hiding place in history, according to the jeweler. But I'm waiting for the right moment. What's the right moment? Daniel was quiet for a beat, then he smiled. I have no idea. Every moment with you feels right. That's the problem. They sat in comfortable silence, swinging gently, listening to the city around them. A year ago, Evelyn would have found this scene impossible to imagine. She'd been so focused on survival, on protecting Emma and clearing her name, that the idea of peace had seemed like a luxury she couldn't afford. Now peace was her reality. Not perfect peace. She still had moments of panic, still struggled with trust, still woke up sometimes convinced it would all fall apart. But it was real and hard-won and hers. The girls are going to lose their minds when we tell them, she said eventually. They already know. I guarantee they've been planning the wedding for months. Should we be concerned that our 8-year-olds are more organized than we are? Probably, but it's also kind of adorable. Daniel stood, pulling her up with him. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her upstairs to his office, the room that had become their shared workspace for foundation planning. On his desk was a folder she hadn't seen before. He opened it to reveal architectural drawings. I've been talking to a contractor, he said, about adding on to the brownstone, a real master bedroom for us, and expanding the girls' rooms so they each have more space. Right now we're squeezed in here, and it works. But if we're doing this for the long term, we should make the house fit the family. Evelyn studied the drawings. They were thoughtful and detailed, preserving the character of the brownstone while creating space for growth. There was a reading nook between the girls' expanded rooms, a shared bathroom with 2 sinks so they wouldn't fight over counter space. The master suite had room for a sitting area and a small balcony overlooking the backyard. This is beautiful, she said. When did you have time to plan all this? Late nights when you were doing foundation paperwork. I wanted to have something concrete to show you when we had this conversation. He pointed to a notation on the plans. This wall could be moved if you wanted your office at home instead of at the foundation. And there's room in the basement for a real workshop if the girls want to continue their science experiments without destroying the kitchen. You've thought of everything. I've tried. Because this isn't just about us getting married. It's about building a home that works for our family, all 4 of us. Evelyn felt tears well up, the good kind that came from being overwhelmed by someone's thoughtfulness. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. You deserve someone who sees you for who you really are and loves you anyway. You deserve someone who will fight beside you and protect what you've built together. You deserve happiness, Evelyn. Stop being surprised when you find it. She kissed him then, deep and fierce and full of all the emotion she couldn't quite articulate. He kissed her back with equal intensity, his hands tangling in her hair, pulling her closer. They broke apart breathless, foreheads touching, both of them smiling. "So is that a yes to the renovation?" he asked. "That's a yes to everything. The house, the marriage, the future, all of it." "Good, because I really did buy a ring, and it would be awkward to return it." They heard a noise in the hallway, a quickly stifled giggle, followed by urgent, whispered shushing. Both of them turned to find Emma and Sophie in their pajamas, clearly having snuck out of bed to spy. "How long have you two been standing there?" Daniel asked, trying to sound stern and failing completely. "Long enough," Sophie said, abandoning any pretense of hiding. "Are you getting married?" "Were you eavesdropping?" Evelyn countered. "That's not an answer to our question," Emma pointed out. Daniel and Evelyn looked at each other, then at their daughters, and gave up any pretense of adult authority. "Yes," Evelyn said. "We're getting married, eventually. There hasn't been an official proposal yet, so this is still sort of a secret." Both girls squealed and rushed forward, wrapping their arms around their parents in an enthusiastic group hug that nearly knocked everyone over. Emma was crying happy tears, Sophie was talking a mile a minute about wedding plans, and the whole thing was chaotic and perfect and exactly what families should be. "Can we be flower girls?" Sophie demanded. "Can we help plan the wedding?" Emma added. "Can we get a dog?" Sophie asked, apparently seizing the moment to push for everything she'd ever wanted. "One thing at a time," Daniel said, laughing. "Yes to flower girls, conditional yes to helping plan within reason, and we'll discuss the dog situation later." "That means no," Sophie told Emma. "That means maybe," Daniel corrected, "which is better than no." They got the girls back to bed eventually, though it took another hour of excited chatter and increasingly elaborate wedding scenarios. By the time Evelyn and Daniel finally collapsed into their own bed, it was past midnight, and they were both exhausted. "Our daughters are going to plan a wedding that costs more than your corporate headquarters," Daniel said into the darkness. "Our daughters are going to drive us insane before they're old enough to drive themselves," Evelyn agreed, "and I wouldn't have it any other way." The next few months were a blur of activity. The Foundation's first major audit uncovered significant fraud at a mid-sized tech company, leading to arrests and reforms. Morrison was in her element, coordinating with law enforcement and working with the company's board to implement better oversight. The case made headlines, and suddenly the Foundation had credibility and a waiting list of companies requesting their services. Emma and Sophie started at a new school together, one that specialized in gifted students and hands-on learning. They thrived there, making friends and diving into projects that challenged them. Emma discovered a love for debate. Sophie started a science club. They were still inseparable, but they were also developing their own identities, becoming their own people. Daniel's consulting business grew beyond what he'd anticipated. Companies valued his expertise and his reputation for integrity. He was busy, sometimes overwhelmed, but it was the good kind of busy, the kind that came from doing work that mattered. And through it all, Evelyn and Daniel planned their life together. The renovation started in September, turning the brownstone into a construction zone. They picked out tiles and paint colors, debated furniture placement, argued about whether they needed a dedicated homework space or if the kitchen table was sufficient. It was domestic and mundane and wonderful. The proposal happened on a Saturday morning in October. No grand gestures, no elaborate planning. Just the four of them making pancakes in their temporary kitchen setup, flour everywhere. Sophie insisting on adding chocolate chips despite Daniel's protests, Emma conducting a taste test that involved eating most of the batter. In the middle of the chaos, Daniel suddenly got down on one knee, ring box in hand, looking up at Evelyn with flour on his cheek and love in his eyes. "I was going to wait for the perfect moment," he said. "But then I realized this is the perfect moment. This messy, chaotic, beautiful life we're building together. So Evelyn Cross, will you marry me?" She said yes through tears and laughter while the girls screamed and jumped and knocked over the mixing bowl in their excitement. The ring was perfect, simple and elegant, exactly what she would have chosen. They kissed while the girls made exaggerated gagging noises and then demanded to see the ring up close. The wedding happened 2 months later in December, small and intimate in the Brownstones' renovated living room. Just close friends, Kate and her family, Morrison, Diane, and a few colleagues from the Foundation. Emma and Sophie were indeed flower girls, wearing matching burgundy dresses and crowns of winter flowers that they'd helped design. Evelyn wore a simple ivory dress, no veil, no elaborate train. Daniel wore a suit that Sophie had helped pick out. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising to be partners and friends, to support each other's dreams and share each other's burdens, to build a family based on trust and honesty and love. When the officiant pronounced them married, Emma and Sophie cheered so loudly that the neighbors probably heard. The celebration afterward was joyful and warm, full of laughter and dancing and toasts that made everyone cry. As the evening wound down and guests filtered out, Evelyn found herself standing in the kitchen with Morrison, who was helping clean up despite protests that she was a guest. "You look happy," Morrison said. "Really happy. It's good to see." "I am happy. Happier than I thought possible a year ago." "You've earned it. You fought hard for this life, Evelyn. Don't forget that. And don't feel guilty for enjoying it." "How did you know I feel guilty?" Morrison smiled. "Because I know you. You're always wondering if you deserve good things, if you've done enough to make up for your father's mistakes. But you have. The Foundation's changing lives. You've built a real family. You've shown people that redemption is possible. That's enough. Let it be enough." It was the permission Evelyn hadn't known she needed. She hugged Morrison, grateful for this woman who'd chosen truth over politics and had become not just a colleague, but a friend. Later, after everyone had left and the girls were asleep upstairs, Evelyn and Daniel sat in their renovated master bedroom, still in their wedding clothes, too happy and tired to move. "We did it," Evelyn said. "We actually did it." "Built a life." "Yeah, we did." Daniel pulled her close. "And it's a good one. The best one." She looked around the room at the framed photos of their blended family, at the artwork Emma and Sophie had created together that hung on the walls, at the evidence of their shared existence. "A year ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lose everything that mattered. Instead, you found everything that matters. I found you, and Sophie, and a purpose beyond just proving I wasn't my father." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I found home." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the house settle around them. Somewhere upstairs, one of the girls was probably still awake, too excited to sleep. In the morning, they'd have pancakes again, probably make another mess, definitely start planning their next adventure. Life would continue in all its beautiful, messy complexity. But right now, in this moment, everything was perfect. Evelyn thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear and betrayal, the desperate fight for survival, the slow building of trust with a man who'd been investigating her. She thought about her father, about the legacies she'd fought so hard to overcome, about the empire she'd built and then willingly dismantled in favor of something more meaningful. She thought about Grace in prison, serving her time and hopefully finding her own path to redemption, about Vance and Patterson and Hendricks, paying for their crimes and hopefully understanding why their actions had been wrong, about the people the Foundation had helped and would continue to help, the lives they'd changed through transparency and accountability. But most of all, she thought about Emma and Sophie, asleep upstairs, safe and loved, and growing up in a home built on honesty. They would never have to fight the battles she'd fought. They would never have to overcome a parent's criminal legacy or wonder if they were doomed to repeat history. They could just be children, and then teenagers, and then adults who'd learned that trust was possible, that family could be chosen, that love was worth the risk. That was her real victory. Not clearing her name or taking down Vance or running a successful foundation. Her victory was in breaking the cycle, in showing her daughter that cross didn't have to mean corruption, that power didn't have to mean exploitation, that success could be measured in kindness instead of profits. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked, his voice soft in the darkness. "Everything, nothing. How lucky I am." She turned to look at him. "How lucky we are." "Luck had nothing to do with it. We fought for this. We earned it." "Maybe both. A little luck, a lot of fighting, and the willingness to trust when every instinct said to stay guarded. Best decision I ever made, trusting you. Best decision I ever made, letting you." They finally stood and got ready for bed, moving through the routine of their shared life. Tomorrow they'd start their honeymoon, just 3 days away because that's all they could manage with work and the girls' school schedules. But 3 days would be enough. 3 days to just be Evelyn and Daniel, not the CEO and the agent, Not the parents with responsibilities, just two people who'd found each other against impossible odds. As Evelyn settled into bed, Daniel already asleep beside her, she allowed herself one last thought about the past year. About the silent test in her office that had started everything, about the moment she'd chosen to trust Daniel instead of treating him as an enemy, about all the choices that had led to this moment. She wouldn't change any of it. Not the fear or the danger or even the trauma of that night in the cabin. Because all of it had been necessary to break her down and rebuild her into someone who could accept love without suspicion, who could trust without constantly waiting for betrayal, who could build a family instead of just an empire. The past was finally past. The future was bright and uncertain and full of possibility. And the present was this: a warm bed, a sleeping husband, two daughters safe upstairs, a home filled with love, and a heart finally at peace. Evelyn Cross had spent her whole life fighting to be someone other than her father's daughter. Now, finally, she was just herself, wife to Daniel, mother to Emma and Sophie, director of a foundation that helped people, friend to those who'd stood by her. She was enough. She'd always been enough. She just needed to nearly lose everything to understand it. As she drifted off to sleep, she heard Sophie's voice from the hallway, probably sleepwalking again. Emma's softer voice answering, leading her back to bed. The sound of their daughters taking care of each other, the way families should. The sound of trust, rebuilt. And it was the most beautiful sound in the world.